Accept the co-host invite, please. Let me ping Sam. Hold on. Where's Sam? All right, just pinged Sam. He's already told me in the DMs he's ready. All right, so there's too many requests to speak, everyone. I'm gonna have to bring them all down. Please don't request to speak unless you've been, or just crowds at all, unless you've chatted to Romy or the team and just confirmed that you'll be joining the panel. If that hasn't happened, please don't request to speak until after the interview's done. Check, can you hear me fine?
You're coming loud and clear.
Simon, I'm gonna send you a co-host invite again. Please accept it.
Yo, Mario, just letting you know that we're live. We got the YouTube stream ready. You guys are all on the stream. We're waiting for you guys.
Appreciate it, bro. I'm just gonna organize everything. So just inviting. We'll see if this space will be Elon's one in terms of the record. I'm not sure. Hopefully it doesn't crash it.
I'm sure it will. Actually, I'm pretty sure that Elon's going to join the space at some point.
I can't even see you right now on the stage.
There you go. It's already starting to glitch. I will give it time. Let me see where Sam is at. All right. He's trying to join. Let me send him the link. I just sent the link to Sam. There's a lot of reports of people not able to join. So it's starting to glitch.
Hey everyone, what an exciting day.
Kim, how are you?
Very good. Hi Sam, nice to see you.
Sam is not here,
Hey.
unless I can't see him.
Oh,
you are here.
I see.
Just got here.
How are you?
Oh, it's been quite the month.
Bro, I messaged you, hey, you all good? And you're like, hey, Mario, I'm stuck in traffic. I might be late. So not sure what you're doing in traffic. Let me get Simon. Simon, are you there? Maybe I can't see Simon.
All right, so as you can see.
All right, I can't hear Ryan either. Check, can you hear me fine?
I can hear you
I'm
fine.
here, Mario, I'm here.
Oh, cool.
I'm
Yeah, I can hear
live.
you fine. Yeah, I can hear you fine. All right, we're just waiting for the co-host. All right, just waiting to co-host Sam and we can kick it off. I've sent you an invite, Sam. You can hear me? Yeah, man, I've sent you an invite to... I'm going to send it again to you and then I'll kick off the show. So I'm just talking to Sam. No, you're good. You're good. So I'm talking to Simon, sorry. You're good, Sam. I can hear you. You're good. Just inviting Simon. I've sent you the co-host invite again, Simon. Chet, if you could try to bring up Simon while I give an intro to the show and kick it off. If you can try to bring up Simon in the meantime as a speaker and then I can co-host him, that would be great.
Okay, I'm here now.
All right, everyone, thank you for joining. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Mario Norful. We do this space whenever there's major news, breaking news and major events. We've had, we did marathon spaces when FTX imploded, and we've had guests from Elon Musk to Mick Mulvaney. We had CZ, Hunter Biden, bunch of regulators. So everyone came into the space and we broke down the events live on stage and had a lot of people within the company, outside the company, come in and comment on the events live. So it was a pretty crazy times. And here we are again today with Sam. Sam, I'm going to kick it off with the questions. You ready?
Go for it.
All right. So the first question is pretty general, and I think you've been asked this before as well. What's the intention of doing these interviews?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, I feel like, I mean, you guys all deserve to hear from me about what happened, and I want to be able to say it.
Is it me or is he choppy, the chat?
I've lost connection as well.
Yeah. So Sam, you're a bit choppy, my friend. So you gotta just fix the internet somehow, if you don't mind.
Sorry, give me 1 second.
Can you hear me,
Just,
Sam? Yeah, no worries, man.
all right, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. All right. So the question again, the intention of doing this interview.
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, like, it's, I feel like you all deserved to hear from me about what happened. I feel incredibly bad about it, and I feel like, I don't know, that's the least that I can do.
All right. So the first question I have, and I know chat has got a lot of questions as usual, but the first question is, there were many other executives around you, and I won't name anyone, and they've been pretty silent throughout all this. So my question to you is, how involved were they in making those major decisions?
I mean, to some extent, I think that there was a pretty big diffusion of responsibility. And I mean, I feel incredibly bad about what happened. I feel bad about everything. And I think that
We're losing the connection.
You're choppy. You're choppy again. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Maybe go somewhere with a better internet connection.
It's not the
do you have a different connection?
It is not that. But anyway, it should be good for now. So
okay.
Yeah, I think, like, at the end of the day, look, I was CEO of FTX, and like that means that one way or another, like, what happens is my responsibility. And I'm the one person who doesn't get to say that whatever, that wasn't sort of like, that wasn't in my realm, that wasn't something that I was chiefly responsible for, that's something that other people were thinking about. Like, I shouldn't get to say that. And I did massively screw up in, I wasn't on top of shit. I wasn't on top of some of the most important things that I should have been. That's on me. And, I don't think, I think no one was really on top of, international, position risk management. And, a lot of people could have been, but I was the person who should have been responsible for making sure that someone was.
How involved were you on the Alameda side versus the CEO and co-CEO at that company?
I haven't really been involved in Alameda for a number of years, and I get, like, periodic high level summaries from them on some of what was going on, but I haven't been making trading decisions there. I haven't been making day-to-day decisions there. I hadn't been paying much attention to it, and part of the reason that I had been paying so little attention to it was out of, frankly, out of a concern about conflicts of interest.
I have a follow-up question on that.
If we don't. So Kim, the way we structured it is, so we've got a list of questions, me and Chet, that we've prepared, and then we'll give the mic to the rest of the stage to ask follow-up questions.
Yeah, it's just important that there is context here to what he's just said. So if you don't mind, you told me that I can ask the first question.
First question when we move the mic to the panel. So you'll be the first one to ask a question after we're done with the line of questioning, if you don't mind.
Yeah, but he said something that is quite important that I think is relevant to catch up on, if I may.
Oh, I'll let you just add this comment, please, and then we'll go through the line of questioning. Please, Kim. And just keep it short, if you don't mind, please.
I appreciate it. So Caroline Allison, the former CEO of Alameda Research, says that you knew that FTX customer deposits were misused against your own terms of service. And then you've stated in several interviews, without much confidence, I may add, that you didn't know. And by saying that, you are basically throwing Caroline under the bus, because if you didn't know, then she must be the culprit who is legally responsible for billions of missing, right? And it's not Caroline had a romantic relationship. So my take from that is that you had power over her and that she did what you asked her to. So my two, would anyone believe?
You're dropping out, Kim.
Yeah, why would anyone believe anything you say when you're throwing your own lover under the bus? And then I was told.
I'll let you, please, Kim, if you can get to the question so we can get through the line of questioning, if you don't mind, please.
Caroline is here and listening right now. So is there anything you would like to say to her?
I'm deeply, I mean, look, I fucked up big, but I'm pretty offended by some parts of that. Like, Caroline and I had been together for a while. I don't control her. I never did. I think it's really fucked that you would say that I would, that's how things work. And, you know, putting that aside for a second, like, I wasn't super involved in Alameda. I was not involved at all in the trading. I hadn't been for years. I was intentionally not getting involved in it because I was concerned about a conflict for interest. But you know, as to you know, I guess I'm not entirely sure what the question was. There's sort of.
We'll go back. We'll go back to the line of questioning. Chet, I'll give you the mic because I know that was one of your questions as well. Chet, go ahead.
Yeah. So SBF, thank you for at least coming here today. Were a customer assets ever backed one-to-one at FTX?
So FTX, it's a margin trading platform. It's a derivatives platform. So like everyone was depositing collateral, you know, putting on positions, long positions, short positions, you know, futures positions, borrows. You know, the collateral that FTX held was equal to the sum of those customer positions. But there were both positive and negative numbers there. And so,
well, what does that mean? What does that mean?
So, well, what it means is that if you as a customer, you know, if you deposit $1,000 and then, you know, withdraw 1/1000th of a Bitcoin from the exchange, or, you know, use that to sell Bitcoin or something like that, you've put on a margin position there, or you know, or if you do it with a Bitcoin futures position, and you know, you know, many of the customers had negative balances in assets. That's sort of how the platform functioned. And
but okay. But my question is, if I deposited Bitcoin into FTX and intended to trade with it on the exchange, or use it in the derivatives, whatever it would be, would I be able to withdraw that at all times, one-to-one?
So the way that, I mean, the way it worked, again, everyone had deposited collateral and people were borrowing and lending from each other on the platform, those assets, and withdrawing them. But it should have been the case that, you know, we could have liquidated any of those positions, that we could have margin called them and sold them off to regenerate whatever.
But was it ever the case? Was it ever the case that there was a one-to-one backing of assets at FTX to where, let's say 2018, 2019, was there ever a point in time where there was an actual one-to-one backing in the custodial portion of FTX?
So it was always the case.
How was that ensured?
This, if you include the negative positions in that you have positives and you have.
Okay, you broke up. We lost your connection after you said it was always the case.
Sorry. So it.
You're breaking up again, Sam.
Sam, are you there?
Damn it. Let me ping him.
He's rugging the space just like he rugged his customers.
Can you see the Can you see him?
Hello?
Chat on stage.
Yes,
Perfect.
SBF,
You're
still there.
back.
Okay, we can hear you again.
Sorry.
Is your connection fixed now?
Yeah, it's not a connection thing. It's when my phone gets a notification that it cuts out for a second.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you please put your phone in not disturb?
If you can,
that's
put
a
it to
good
not
idea.
disturb or turn off notification. That'll be good.
All right, give me a second.
And just a reminder for panelists, if you don't mind,
Yep.
we'll open up the mic for the panelists
right.
after the questions, please.
Cool.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Sean.
that's a good idea.
Okay.
Right, so do not disturb.
So you were telling us that it was always the case.
Well, that it was always the case that the customer balances were equal to the assets as long as you count the negatives as well as the positives. That if you add up all of the customer balances, positive and negative, that those were equal to the assets that FTX had. The problem is that there are both positives and negatives there, which is the nature of margin trading. But it should have been the case that at the end of the day, we could have margin called any of those accounts and been able to liquidate them in time.
You did have auto liquidation procedures in place for many accounts at FTX, correct? That was actually part of the system.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, I'll get to that a little bit later because there's a little bit deeper dive on that. When did it stop being the case that customer assets were actually backed one-to-one?
Well, it never stopped being the case.
Well, it has to have stopped being the case, SBF. If people can't withdraw their money, then it's not one-to-one.
It never stopped being the case in the context of the fact that there were both positive and negative balances on the exchange, and that if you added all of those up, it added up to the same set of assets. But because there are negative balances, because there are people with borrowers, there are people who are short, that meant that the total amount of assets was not the same as the gross sum of all of the long positions put together, which meant that in order to be able to allow everyone to withdraw all assets from the venue, you would have to settle all contracts and close down all open positions and all open margin positions that anyone had. That's the nature of a margin trading exchange. But to that second point, there's obviously a really big failure there of risk management, and that's on me.
And you said that FTX is what you paid the most attention to.
Yep.
So much so that you claim you couldn't track Alameda's compliance properly. Surely, though, you had the time to be checking, on the balance sheets of the company you were laser focused on, right? Like watching the statistics on trading revenues could not have been taking up so much of your day that you didn't have the ability to oversee compliance and user funds.
So I'm not sure what you mean by compliance in context there, but
compliance to legal laws, fiduciary responsibilities, risk management.
Sure. So I think that first of all, I absolutely could have and deeply wish that I had paid a lot more attention to risk management. Like that was a deep failing, and it was a really embarrassing mistake for me to have made. And I think it was a result in part of me getting a bit less grounded and of me starting to get distracted from all of the details of the company. There are still some I was paying a lot of attention to, but not as many as could have been. And I was paying too much attention to higher level things, to long-term strategic goals, rather than spending as much energy as I absolutely should have on.
And you've stated that the markets plunging were a large part of why FTX had to shutter its door. That's essentially one of the reasons. You gave two reasons, right? And one of the big reasons is you said the markets plunged. But if the funds are backed one-to-one, changes in the market prices versus the dollar have zero impact on being able to withdraw funds if it's set up properly. It just needs the dollar. It just means the dollar value of those funds has changed, correct? So technically, that's not a real reason for why people weren't able to take it out. That's a failure.
I think that's not actually how a derivatives exchange works. On a derivatives exchange, and you can look at the clawbacks that a lot of exchanges had back in 2018, the really frequent clawbacks. And the core problem that was going on there was, in order for everyone to be able to realize what they think they have, you need to be able to close down all positions on the venue such that no accounts end up net negative. So you need to be able to take every single account, in theory, liquidate them, close down all margin, all futures positions, such that there are no negative numbers or positions or balances anywhere, and do that. And if you have a long position, if some user has a long position on the exchange, and markets start crashing, at some point that position is going to be underwater. And at the point where that position is underwater, that means you aren't going to be able to close it down while still leaving that account with a positive balance. It'll have a
But it
negative
shouldn't be
balance.
able. It shouldn't be able in a properly managed environment for it to go underwater, right? Essentially, because if we're to look at your terms of service, which says that you can't loan out user funds, it shouldn't be possible for those user funds to end up basically being loaned out to those margins.
So that was one piece of the terms of service, but there are many pieces to the terms of service concerning other parts of the exchange.
Yes, that doesn't change that parts of the terms of service. One, the fact that there are other parts of the terms of service doesn't change the paragraph of the terms of service that says you can't lend out the depositor's funds to FTX trading, and FTX trading could not move them to be traded. And now, granted, when you spoke with Vox or the reporter at Vox over there, you seemed to indicate that, in fact, funds were lended out from FTX to Alameda, and Alameda then made the trades, and therefore that's why you're able to kind of make the statement that FTX wasn't doing investments here.
So the parts of the terms of service are overridden by other parts of the terms of service. Well, it was the case that I don't know if that was part of the. I don't know exactly.
So was it your intention to use user funds, customer funds, to lend out to others on the platform without their consent?
So if you imagine any futures position that a customer had on the platform, that is a situation where, in order for one side that has a position on to be able to be made whole, it has to be the case that the other side is able to close down their position, that those mark-to-market gains that they have are conditional, and that they're credited with on the platform are conditional on us being able to liquidate the other side of that futures contract without that account going under. The same is true of all spot margin positions on the platform, and that was spelled out in the terms of service if you read the full terms of service. And so there's that piece of it. There's a lot of other things going on as well, and so I don't want to say that was the only thing that went wrong. It wasn't.
Okay, we'll go deeper into that a little bit later. You were the majority stakeholder by a wide margin.
I've just got two quick questions.
Go for it, Mario.
Chat. Also, I've just got another panelist, Chat, who could be jumping in. I've given him the right to jump in to comment on a few points. So if he jumps in, his account is real zero sum. Sam, my question is, was Alameda allowed to remove assets from FTX? And is that how they paid back Genesis and others who demanded to close their loans?
So, all users were to some extent allowed to remove assets from FTX in that, they could deposit funds to FTX, they could withdraw, and they could even withdraw more than they had of some assets as long as it was over collateralized by other assets. So that piece was, in theory, not specific to one firm, and was rather a feature of how the platform worked. That's how margin trading works. It's how collateralized but not fully funded positions work on platforms. That being said, obviously, something really bad happened, and that something was that position got way too big, and I vastly underestimated.
Okay, we'll get into that
piece
of that in just we'll get into that piece in just a second.
Sure.
After a few more questions. Are you still the owner of Alameda right now?
I mean, there's a definitional issue given what you think of the Chapter 11 process. I was a large owner of it prior to that.
And how much of a stake did you own it?
Chet, before we go down that road, can I just get some clarity on the loan book thing? Because I've got a message here from an owner of an exchange, and he says the following. He says, the way margin trading works is via the loan book. that where people explicitly put their funds to be available for others to borrow for the specific rate. For people that didn't put their funds in the loan book, all those assets should have always been backed one-to-one and never touched. So it's a case of saying that in order for my money to be lent out, you would have had to have my specific permission, because I would have had to put it out there to be available for people to borrow against when they take a position, right?
So I totally hear you on that. There were billions of dollars in the borrow lending book. On top of that, there are billions of dollars of open interest on futures contracts, which is another place where, in order for that to be able to settle successfully, it needs to be the case that that you have, you basically need to have, everyone be able to be liquidated there in time. And so that's another source where this came from. There were some amount of lines of credit given to some firms on the venue. And then there were some other effects on top of that, that when stacked together, created a position that was larger than it should have been, larger than I thought it was, larger than I should have allowed it to become, and represented a real failure of oversight and management.
Sam, are you saying that there were people that had their collateral not on the platform and they were trading against collateral that was not actually even in the system? Because if the collateral was on the system,
Yep.
then to liquidate the collateral should have been automatic. But if the collateral was out of the system, so if you're saying Alameda, for example, or others had collateral, but the collateral was not in FTX, then isn't that a breach of the terms of service?
Oh, they did have collateral on FTX, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately, but this was a huge mistake of mine as well, because I should have anticipated, the prospect of this and should not have.
What happened to that collateral?
Things, but it decreased quite a bit in value, and so you look at it decreased by, I think, many billions of dollars in value over a 2-day period, starting on November 6th.
Okay, and yeah, go ahead, Ran. I'll take that.
So you're saying that the collateral went down so quickly that you didn't have time to liquidate the position quickly enough to be able to get the borrower side and the lend side into equilibrium?
Yeah, I can probably share it. I could probably throw some a little bit here as well. The way that obviously works is on an LTV ratio. So when building out the product, the risk management margin system for this runs off a loan to value ratio. So that's how they're deciding on when collateral needs to be put back into the system to bring it back up and to meet that. Unfortunately, the mix between a bank run at the same time as a massive drop within what the people had used on there as collateral. Some of them had FTT token, for example. And when we saw the drop in that, they're unable to meet the LTV requirements. So there is actually nothing there to liquidate, right? In terms of collateral, the actual lenders themselves needed to provide more collateral into the system. And because of what they were providing as collateral had dropped in value, this becomes a massive waterfall effect. So this isn't just an FTX product problem. I mean, the risk management margin system on FTX is great. I mean, clawbacks on derivatives was a very tough thing to tackle. I think FTX did that very well. This is a bit of an oversight on the counterparty risk to FTX, not just FTX itself in this matter. If Sam could probably correct that, that's obviously there's more factors than just the management on FTX's side. There's a counterparty issue here as well, in which what they had collateralized their instruments on FTX against.
Yeah, everything you said there is correct. And it was absolutely a failure of counterparty management. It was a failure of oversight of the account. It was a failure of management responsibility. And it was a failure of understanding, or even frankly thinking that hard about what a real downside scenario there would look like, because
you said
can I add to this?
Hold on, Zero Sum. I appreciate it if I'm able to continue my line of questioning.
And before you do chat, just for speakers, just please mute after you speak, just to avoid background noise, because I can't mute you at the moment. My space is glitching. Go ahead, chat.
Okay, so Sam, you said that you fucked up, right? and you got the numbers wrong by magnitudes of billions of dollars in regards to Alameda's balances on FTX, right? Now, while we can all make mistakes, right? As a graduate of MIT, that seems highly improbable. So, how precisely? I think you need to explain this quite in detail to our audience. How precisely did you mess up a calculation that far, in a way that happened to massively benefit Alameda and FTX's balance sheets in a fraudulent manner?
I'm gonna answer the question as if there weren't a few of those words in it, but I, basically, and I should caveat this by saying that I unfortunately don't have access to most of the data right now. I've lost access to a number of the systems, and so because of that, this is all piecing together. From my recollection, from the pieces of data I have been able to find from the analyses I did in the days shortly after the crash. So these are all going to be approximate answers, and I apologize for that. I don't have the exact ones, but the
you referenced an accounting quirk, correct?
Yes, that's right. So,
and what is that?
So what happened there was the following, and I think there's some tweets, about this that sort of reference this fact. You scroll back to 2019 when FTX was first founded, and at that time we were trying to get bank accounts for FTX. We couldn't. We eventually did, a few years later, but 2019, 2020, we couldn't get bank accounts that could take customer deposits for FTX. We obviously were operating crypto wallets and had crypto deposits and withdrawals, but some customers, generally ones that had in many cases sort of like pursuing relationships OTC with Alameda, would wire money to Alameda Research, asking to be credited to their FTX account, and they'd wire it straight to Alameda, and then we would do a ledger transfer on FTX, effectively from Alameda to that to whoever sent that wire transfer in order to credit them. Over the last few years, we transitioned away from that system because over the last few years, FTX was able to get its own bank accounts in its own name, and straightforwardly take customer deposits through that. There are legal documents drawn up around that payment service relationship. I didn't know the details of those, and there was an accounting system built out for it that I didn't know the details of.
Who built out the accounting system?
I mean, it's a set of developers. It's
at your direction or at someone else's direction?
I honestly don't remember. It was 3 years ago and 3.5 years ago, and I think that I was probably involved in some very high level discussions around it, but I don't remember and I don't know if I ever knew exactly who was involved in making exactly those decisions.
Why not?
So, Chet, do you mind if I just ask a question? You mentioned that people were depositing money into Alameda, and then Alameda was doing a ledger transfer to FTX. Isn't that highly illegal, though, specifically in an exchange environment? Isn't it illegal for a related party to act as a middleman between a customer and an exchange?
I don't think so. Can you point to in what way? Sorry, obviously it can be done in a poor manner. Like you could implement it in a way which is not okay. And I think it should be disclosed, which it was disclosed. And
so what was Alameda's role? What was Alameda acting as? If I was putting money into Alameda and that money was appearing on the FTX exchange as a credit in my account, what was Alameda's role in that structure? Because they would need to have a money transmitting license or a broker dealer license or something if they were accepting money from a customer that was then landing up on an exchange. No,
none of this was on FTX US. And by the way, FTX US, to my knowledge, is fully solvent, fully funded. There's nothing strange that happened there, to my knowledge, and I think should be returning all customer funds and should be opening up withdrawals.
Why did you file it for bankruptcy then?
I'm an idiot. I don't know. I was given poor information by lawyers. I was pressured very heavily to do so by people I no longer believe were acting in the interest of customers. It was 4:30 a.m. I was extremely exhausted, being hounded by many people. I made
Who
yet
all
another
was there
really
at that
poor
meeting?
judgment call.
Before we go to the
Hold on a
bankruptcy,
second, Mario. This is an important question. Who all was there at that meeting?
I was speaking with legal counsel at the time.
Were your parents present at that meeting as well?
I actually don't know if I'm even allowed or supposed to say who is there, but
the first day, the bankruptcy declaration seemed to say that that was actually the case. At 4:30 a.m., you finally resigned with your parents. There, you were convened with the lawyers and the parents. So why are you hesitant to mention the fact that your parents were present at that meeting?
I'm in general hesitant because of there are limits to what you can say about some conversations that involve legal counsel, and so I was just being hesitant out of an abundance of caution there. But if there's an importance here that you want to dive into, I'm happy to do it.
Well, no, I'm just interested here. I mean, you said you're not really interested in taking your legal counsel right now. Who's representing you right now at this stage?
Oh, I do have legal counsel right now. I have new legal counsel, and
okay. How are you paying for them?
I need to ask one question before we're moving on to a topic. One more question about the Alameda getting the funds. So just quickly, and I'll give you the mic back for the line of questioning. So the dollars, Sam, that were sent to Alameda because FTX didn't have a bank account. So they were used by Alameda like it's their own money when they were really customer assets all along. And Caroline knew. Is that correct?
Sorry. Can I kind of extend on this question?
Sam, no, because the question wasn't asked to you. This question's
no. So let him. Real Zero Sum, bro. It's okay. Zero Sum, just extend quickly to that question, and then I'll let Sam answer it.
Yeah, I just to extend on it a little bit. In regards to the funds at Alameda, obviously we saw Brett and we saw Sam leave from obviously FTX US and also Alameda sometime last year, which kind of leads to I guess a highlighter point that something went wrong back then. What position, do you know of a position exactly that Alameda took, or was it with the collateralized instruments we were talking about earlier? Did perhaps say Sam, Tribeca or Caroline, did they happen to get involved within the Luna and the 3AC crash? Was Alameda obviously victim to that? Because looking on chain, it seems to be that's where the volume started to drop off. The FTT token started to need to really be pegged at 22. It seems like that is around about the time that you guys really suffered a liquidity crunch through Alameda that needed to be plugged.
There were a bunch of different questions there. I'll try and go through some of them. I'm not going to remember all of them, but going through some of those. So, as for why Brett and Tribeca left, I don't think it had anything to do with this. I think and they can talk for themselves about why they did. But from my from what I knew, I think it was entirely unreal. I think it was personal. In terms of talking about timing, I don't have granular detail here. I don't have access to that right now, and I wasn't running Alameda, so I don't know exactly what happened. I don't believe that there was a large loss coming from Luna itself, but I do think Alameda was probably quite long the market in general, that it had a net long position, and that the general market collapse that happened then did decrease its asset values a non-trivial amount. I think there are a lot of other questions asked, but
it's okay. So I'll give the mic back. So I'll give it back to Chet. Chet, I'll let you continue with the line of questioning, please.
All right. Now you've claimed that Alameda's trading ties with FTX had lessened significantly over the years, correct?
Yeah.
Yet data from Arkham Intelligence and reviews of public blockchain records show that over 50% of Alameda's deposits and withdrawal volume since early 2018 had gone through FTX from all data analyzed prior to August 31st of this year. Their data also showed, quote, 22% of on-chain deposits and withdrawals to FTX digital wallets interact with wallets belonging to Alameda, close quote. And Anchain.ai was also able to reveal that from June 1st till July 22nd, Alameda's known wallets were the largest stablecoin depositors and sources of liquidity to all of FTX's known wallet addresses. And your firms were made aware of this data, correct?
So, just to kind of jump ahead of some of this, I think those are all very similar statements.
I prefer that you just answer the question. Were your firms made aware of what I just asked you?
I'm not sure. I was vaguely aware of some things related to that.
Bloomberg reached out to Alameda on September 14th about this, did they not?
I wouldn't know. I'm not Alameda.
You own Alameda. You wouldn't have been consulted on any press. You weren't consulted on anything that had to do with press in Alameda, ever. Is that your claim?
I don't know that I can make a statement about ever. I can't remember having been consulted on many things related to Alameda Press. I don't remember this particularly coming up, and I think I may have been.
Well, but you just said a few seconds ago that you remember something kind of like this.
Sorry, I remember chatter about some things like this in the crypto ecosystem.
That's interesting because you just contradicted yourself. So this means that you would have been aware of an issue already ongoing at a minimum as far back as September. If we're to believe that you didn't know anything prior, right? So why would this not cause you to look deeper into something that would appear to show, years after you claim the separation had waned, that Alameda still had too much power on FTX trades?
So can I answer the question now?
Yeah, go ahead. Chet, please allow Sam to answer, please. Chet. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm not surprised by the fact that Alameda was a large fraction of stablecoin deposits and withdrawals on FTX. That doesn't surprise me at all because Alameda was, first of all, a large fraction in general of stablecoin deposits and withdrawals and activity in the crypto ecosystem. But second of all, specifically did do a lot of cross-chain conversions of stablecoins with and through FTX. So in terms of raw notional of blockchain and particularly of stablecoin deposits and withdrawals, especially just in a sort of like zero-sum way where there would be some deposited, some withdrawn, that doesn't surprise me that Alameda had a significant footprint there. However, and in retrospect, I certainly wish that I had done a much deeper dive into Alameda's positions and balances and the history of that on FTX, and that was absolutely a huge oversight.
Why didn't you when there was chatter about this, though?
So the comments that I had been making were around its trading activity. And Alameda's trading volume on FTX had dropped from something like 45% of volume in 2019 to something like 2% of volume in.
And is that public record? Is there anywhere to verify that claim?
I've said it many times. I don't know how one would verify it publicly.
Okay, so it's just your word. Okay, go on, continue.
You could ask the relevant teams. You could ask the Chapter 11 team for that data. You could ask anyone who has looked at that data. You could ask
I've just
DM'd you. You could look at the files that we submitted time and time again to various.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chet, I've just DM'd you as well the data now, so you can check your DM. So go ahead, Sam.
Yeah. So from a trading and volume perspective, it was the case that Alameda had become a fairly small fraction of FTX's overall activity. Now, obviously, that was not true, as it turns out, when you looked at Alameda's positions on the exchange. And again, like, I've made a lot of mistakes here, and that was certainly one of them, was not paying more attention to balances and positions. I was looking at volume because that's what drove revenue, and that's what to me seemed to be driving like business growth. And so I was looking at volume broken down by by account, but also by geography, by source type, by product, growth over time relative to other venues, and there is nothing that was a real. There's nothing alarming happening in those trends. Obviously, in terms of positions, there was. In terms of the on-chain deposits and withdrawals, that's actually, I think, a little bit of a different thing, which is neither of those two. And I think is related to the fact that, Alameda used FTX to convert between different stablecoins a fair bit. And also, there were a lot of, so one thing worth knowing here is a lot of the relevant wallets got misidentified on things like Chainalysis between Alameda and FTX. And some of these wallets were basically what FTX was using to convert between two different stablecoins. So if a user, deposited a lot of BUSD and then wanted to withdraw USDC, there'd have to be basically, and if the reserves were mostly in BUSD at that point, there'd have to be a redemption of BUSD and then a creation of USDC, which would be sent back. And so that activity represented a fair bit of blockchain-based stablecoin deposits and withdrawals to and from FTX, although it was fairly separate from the rest of what was going on.
In what way were you
Sam,
protecting? In what way were you protecting? Sorry, Mario, stop that. In what way were you protecting customer assets?
Sorry, are you? When you say
in what way was FTX protecting customer assets? Which way did you ensure the protection of customer assets?
So there were some ways that we did. Obviously, there are ways I deeply, deeply wish that I had done way better at and deeply regret what happened. The ways that I had been focused on it the most had been looking at a combination of basically of looking at the cybersecurity side, ensuring that there weren't, hacks on the wallets, keeping a, counting of the assets, making sure that that didn't deviate from what, some balances was, getting, GAAP audits at the end of each year, and also just dealing with, frankly, a lot on the fiat deposit withdrawal side, where customers would be trying to send money to and from the exchange.
And you just mentioned auditors there. Who audited your finances?
It's sorry, I'm not 100% sure if it's public who that is. I can say so after, presuming that it is. I think probably
was Prager Metis a
that is correct.
auditor? Okay.
Yeah.
And where
Sam,
I'll give Rand. Rand, do you want to ask a question? We'll give it back to Chet.
I'd like to finish what I'm saying here first, and then
go ahead.
And then the interruptions really aren't helping. Where were they headquartered?
It was a U.S.-based firm.
Okay, and now the Bohemian securities regulator issued a statement on November 17th saying they ordered FTX to move, quote, Bohemian funds on November 12th. Is that correct?
There is a statement that was roughly, I don't remember the details of it.
Okay, and were you able to? You were the one who functioned this out, according to your statements to pretty much everyone over the past few days. You functioned this out. Were you able to do this as you were still the controlling owner of Alameda and the debtor, or what gave you the capability to do this after the Chapter 11 was technically filed?
I don't believe that I've confirmed that as the one who did it, because I was largely not. But in addition to that...
But hold on a second. You have stated in your interview with Tiffany Fong just a few days ago that you in fact told them of your intentions to do this at least a day prior to them even making a request. Is that correct?
Sorry, intentions to do what?
To move the Bohemian funds. I don't believe I'm unclear on that at all.
That I told who to do that? Because I don't believe
the Bohemian regulators. You don't think that's correct? Okay. Would you? Okay. So hold on 1 second while I play for you your own audio, and for everyone listening, this is from an interview with Sam Bankman-Fried and Tiffany Fong from just a few days ago.
Withdrawals were opened first to citizens of Antigua or Bahamas, yes. Yes, and then the regulators or securities said that was not approved.
Yeah,
Wait, sorry?
All right, so I gave them a heads up, a 1-day heads up that we were going to do it. They didn't say yes or no. They didn't respond, and then we did it. The reason I did it was it was critical to the exchange being able to have a future, because that's where I am right now, and you do not want to be in the country with a lot of angry people in it, and you do not want your company being incorporated in a country with a lot of angry people in it. And so it was, realistically speaking, it's shitty, but the pathway forward for FTX involved Bahamians not being pissed at it.
Because I guess it could have been looked at as insider withdrawal sort of thing.
Oh, it wasn't insider withdrawals. No, this was trying to create a regulatory pathway forward for the exchange.
Just to kind of appease the citizens of the country that you're currently in, basically.
And that the company was about to be assigned a provisional liquidator. And
okay, so that seems to directly refute what you just told me, does it not?
Sam, you're muted.
Yeah. Hey, sorry. The incident that you were referring to is a different one, I believe, or at least the incident that if you repeat where that came from, the incident that I believe, or sorry, start that question over again. I at least inferred that you were talking about a time when Bohemian.
I stated the Bohemian Securities Regulator issued a statement on November 17th saying they ordered FTX to move Bohemian funds on November 12th, so 5 days prior. And you have then confirmed that to Tiffany Fong, saying that you did move those funds.
No, those are referring to different
to the Bohemian
things.
regulators.
Those are referring to two different incidents.
Okay, so then you okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hold on a second, Mario. Hold on a second.
Just give Sam the opportunity to answer, bro.
Yeah, I'm going to, but I'm reframing the question, and you're really not helping right now. So the Bohemian funds on November 12th were removed. You're saying are separate. So what was the separation? So you're saying did you move citizens' funds and actually allow citizens to withdraw funds?
Hi.
In which incident?
Oh, I just wanted
the incident in which you're referring to Tiffany Fong.
That was a separate thing where we briefly had withdrawals open for some Bahamian residents on the exchange. That is something that I think was, for a day or so before abuse of that forced us to turn it off, and is a completely, that was prior to Chapter 11. That was prior to any filings. That was when I was CEO unambiguously of all of FTX, and was unrelated to the other incidents that have been referenced in filings and other things.
Okay, so we have Tiffany Fong here as well. Was that your understanding of the conversation?
Yes, that was a separate question. It was not regarding the hack. That was about the reopening of Bahamian withdrawals. So I just wanted to clarify that. That was not in reference to the hack.
Guys, do you mind if I go back to just the beginning? Just say on the exchange there were spot positions and there were margin positions. At that point, the exchange ran completely out of funds. What happened to the that had spot positions on the exchange? Because they shouldn't have been leveraged, right?
So there are a few answers to that. The first is that there were a number of withdrawals that did happen on the exchange. It is not the case that all of the funds were not available. I think we processed, I want to say something like $6 billion of withdrawals over a few day period, and so part of the answer to that question is that they were a lot of those withdrawals were processed prior to reaching the peak of the liquidity crisis and prior to withdrawals being effectively halted. There are I think a bunch of other things going on as well there, some of which I'm still digging into, some of which I'm still piecing together. But yeah.
But Sam, let me just ask you a very simple question. If I'm a user of FTX, I deposited 1 Bitcoin into FTX on spot. I'm not a leverage trader. I just day-to-day use the leverage exchange. I'm just trying to understand where my Bitcoin is today. Just a little bit of clarity of was that Bitcoin notional Bitcoin on the exchange, but the money sitting on Alameda? Was my Bitcoin used as somebody else's collateral without my permission? I think let's separate the discussion between spot and futures. On futures, I understand that there could have been potentially maybe a margin mismatch. And I hear you, and I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because I think we had some good interactions, and I don't believe that you're an evil person. But I'm just wondering about the spot exchange, and that's people that didn't give anybody permission to use their money, but that money is no longer there anymore, right? So I'm just wondering what that money could be.
Right. So, one piece of this is that in those few days following the collapse, we processed about $6 billion of withdrawals, and those withdrawals in general were from a variety of sources, including some of those coming from futures position, from margin positions that were open, and that meant that that there was not a clear that effectively, I think, broke down some of that distinction between the two sources. Again, I'm trying to I'm trying to piece together all of what happened, and I don't have access to to put all of it together right now. But my best guess is that that was at least a significant part of it.
So the hot wallets between futures and spot were commingled.
Why are we just allowing?
Yeah, so it sounds to me like
between futures and spot, those were commingled,
right? That's right. Yeah, in general, balances were treated as effectively fungible with each other.
Okay, now wait. I just want to with that in mind, I just want to try and understand something. So I put money I want to deposit money into FTX. I deposit money into Silvergate Bank, which is a United States bank. I put the money into the bank. That money lands up in Alameda's bank account, right? So now you've got, let's say I take $100, I deposit $100 into FTX, but what I actually do is I'm depositing into Silvergate's account on Alameda, and the account name is Alameda. So now Alameda has $100 of my money, and then I want to buy a Bitcoin let's say I put $20,000 in and I want to buy a full Bitcoin. The money is, tell me where the money is sitting now, though, because this is the part that I'm confused about.
Yeah. I'm not surprised you're confused, because it's confusing, and it confused me, and there were a lot of poor decisions made there on our part. My understanding, and again, I'm not 100% confident in all of this. I am still trying to piece together all of this, again, without access to data in retrospect. But my general understanding is that, and here you're referring, I think, to the, especially the sort of 2019, 2020 era, where there were no FTX bank accounts, but where some customers were wiring straight to Alameda Research.
I'm trying to work out if the money ever left Alameda and was stored in a custodian somewhere else, which really represented a balance on the exchange, or whether there was a money deposited into Alameda, which we'll talk about in a second, and then you just gave me a notional balance on FTX, which was just a digital number on a screen, and you let me use that money to trade potentially notional Bitcoin, because actually I didn't have physical balance on the exchange because the money was sitting in an Alameda account. That's the part that I'm trying to understand, because that would make sense as to why Alameda had so much money to invest in projects and FTX didn't have any money to pay out to customers, right?
Yeah, so I believe that was part of the story. And again, I'm not 100% confident. I'm working with what I have here, but I believe that what you said is effectively part of what happened. I'll give one caveat to it, which is that I believe there was a ledger transfer away. It wasn't just a pure crediting of the customer on FTX. There was a transfer from one account to another, but that debit didn't clearly show up as a debit on Alameda's main account, and so did not clearly add on the dashboard to the risk of Alameda's position, which is one of the things that led to me being surprised by the size of the position.
Because that makes sense as to why there were no more Bitcoin to withdraw, where customers like that I know had Bitcoin balances, because those Bitcoin actually didn't exist, because it was just notional. You were just letting us buy notional tokens that didn't actually really exist.
Or another way of phrasing that.
Because otherwise you would have had to have the USDC somewhere.
Right. Yeah. I believe that what you're saying is in fact part of what happened.
Chet, do you want to continue with your questions, man?
Yeah, so just to continue here. So when you're saying, I do want to go back to those funds that you moved to the Bohemian citizens. When you moved them, you were already aware of the issues of liquidity, correct?
So when you say move them, this was a question of which withdrawals in which jurisdictions were open when. There were other jurisdictions where withdrawals were open as well. It was not a single shut off on all process. But yeah, there were liquidity issues creeping up. and we had a staggered shutoff effectively of withdrawals. There was not large size for what it's worth that went out there. Nearly the entirety of the withdrawals that we processed, I want to say something like 95%. I think more than 95% of the withdrawals were all done prior to any shutdowns. But there was a little bit left that came out from some jurisdictions, the Bahamas being one, Japan being another, given that Japan has segregated assets, and there may have been one or two other jurisdictions as well.
Why did you allude to saying that you moved those funds to appease Bahamian authorities by ensuring that Bahamian citizens wouldn't be angry at you for losing their funds, specifically in this context?
So I wouldn't say I moved them. I mean, it's a question of whether to close withdrawals, and it was accounts choosing whether or not to initiate withdrawals. I wasn't initiating them, but yeah, that was one of the jurisdictions that we were last to turn off withdrawals in. That is correct, and it felt appropriate given that was where our primary regulator was. That's where our headquarters was, and
okay.
But after about a day of that, we started to see some signs of people trying to abuse it, and we shut it down.
Sam, just a question. You guys were.
I dropped out. Go ahead, chat.
Sam, you claimed that FTX US and FTX Japan are entirely solvent and also entirely separate from the rest of your companies, correct?
Yep.
I think everyone would be interested to hear why you filed for bankruptcy for both of those, not just FTX US, but FTX and Japan. Why did you make that decision, regardless of the time that you made it? If you knew these were entirely solvent, why wouldn't you have argued to keep them out of the Chapter 11?
I argued for quite a while to keep them out. In the end, I was informed in a way which I no longer believe was true, that this filing would not mean that withdrawals would be shut off there, that this did not mean a bankruptcy filing, that it was just a provisional step, but that appropriate and responsible steps would be taken in those jurisdictions. I am surprised at what happened after my filing. I don't know why that's what happened, and I regret it.
Okay, and just to go a little bit further there, so you specifically though didn't file FTX Digital Markets, right? FTX Prey, Express Prey, and at least two other entities in the Chapter 11.
Right.
If you were able to choose not to file those, how come you couldn't for the U.S. and Japan corporations?
I wish I hadn't. I wish that I had done what you're saying.
I'm not asking what you wish you could have done. I'm asking why you didn't.
The reason that I didn't file those in particular was those were entities where local regulators prior to my filing had already stepped in and initiated their own processes. And so I couldn't have, even if I had wanted to, for those entities.
And that includes FTX Australia?
Yes.
You also said that 8 minutes after you filed the initial motion for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, $4 billion more of liquidity basically was called in. Someone said that they could give you that cash injection. Is that correct?
I don't dispute that I've said something like that.
But did you actually get the liquidity of $4 billion offered to you 8 minutes after you filed the Chapter 11? So that would have been 4:38 in the morning. Did you get that actually offered to you?
Yes.
By whom? Can you state?
I cannot.
Okay. Why haven't you filed a motion to voluntarily dismiss the bankruptcy cases under U.S. Bankruptcy Code Section 1112 if you believed that you could save the company through that cash injection, and you also thought that FTX US and FTX Japan were fully solvent?
I acknowledge your question. I want to make sure that I operate in a responsible and compliant manner here. I would be discussing what would or would not be appropriate with counsel, and at the end of the day, I think that the right parties to be filing here would not be I think that the right parties would be regulators, administrators who are overseeing this internationally, who have been leading the charge. But I acknowledge your question there.
Okay, so you're saying essentially that's a non-answer, right? Like, because you didn't say why you haven't filed that motion. You just said you would talk with counselors about that. what counselors, who are you paying? Like what does it cost you right now for counsel, and how are you affording that? Given you said that you were essentially cash poor, although you said you also had potentially up to $100,000 left.
That's something I'm trying to figure out right now.
So you have them on retainer without actual payment?
I can't go into the details. There are also potentially various relevant D&O policies which are being examined as well. But frankly, that is a concern for me.
Okay. And what funds were lost in the hack, and from what entities that you're aware of?
I don't know the details of that. That happened after the Chapter 11 team.
Okay.
But I think to my knowledge, this sort of on-chain analytics, as long as you make sure to distinguish between the various custodial processes that were taken, then to my knowledge, have done a decent job of tracking what that was, but I don't know a ton more than that.
Okay, but you said that FTX US lost $250 million in the hack. That was a statement from you. Correct?
When did I say that?
You said that in the past few days, literally. So if you said that FTX lost $250 million in the hack, where are you getting that information from?
So I would be surprised if I'd said that it had done that. I think I wouldn't be surprised if I'd speculated that maybe the notional of it was something kind of similar to that based on what had happened on chain, but I don't think I know exactly how much it was or from exactly what entity.
Okay, but if you're assuming that much, and Arkham Intelligence also reported that around $204 million of funds were moved off of that U.S. exchange to Alameda just a few days prior to the bankruptcy. Does that mean there's a plausibility of a $500 million hole at FTX or at US, or does that mean there's just a plausibility of a $250,000 hole?
So I will make a few notes. This is all as of when I had last looked into it, and my data is somewhat stale here, so I'm just guessing as best I can. First of all, the funds moved off. There are also funds moved on. There were a lot of deposits and withdrawals on FTX US from many customers, including Alameda, but those were fully solvent accounts, and to my knowledge, all of the customers ended positive on FTX US, such that there was no hole created by any of that activity. There's not an equivalent of what happened on the international exchange, so that part would not contribute to it. In terms of the hack, I don't know how much that came from FTX US. I might be knowable from looking at on-chain activity. I had believed FTX.
I've lost his audio. Is it just
yeah, no, it's me too.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, you're back. Sorry,
Sam, we
Sam,
lost you there for about 10 seconds.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, I'm back. But I had and basically to my knowledge, I think that there were substantial surpluses there, such that I think it would still be to my knowledge, solvent. Although again, I don't have access to current data.
Okay. All right. And
hold on that point. Sorry, on that point regarding the US customers. So I know Altcoin Psycho pinned a tweet, and I know many people that are in very similar positions. He says, "What about the thousands of customers who did an ACH withdrawal pre-bankruptcy announcement and never received their money in their bank? Surely, if FTX US was fully solvent, the bank account used to process the ACH withdrawals should have continued processing."
Are these ones that were processed shortly prior to that, or that were processed
before? Yeah, just shortly prior to the announcement, there were a whole lot of customer withdrawals, and those just stopped being paid.
So I can't speak to the actions taken by people who are running that business right now, or what decisions they are or aren't making. Just my belief that there would exist the funds to pay out to customers were that to be the chosen pathway. But I can't speak to which decisions are being made about whether or not to choose that pathway.
But some of these were done days before. Some of these were actually done days before.
I mean, I don't know the details of individual transfers. ACH transfers can take a week to clear sometimes. But again, I don't have access to look into individual ones.
I mean, they can take a week to clear. I agree with you that they can take a week to clear. That's not a problem. But once they are in the system, it's just a case of clearing. It's not a case. It's if the transaction's in the system.
That's a chargeback.
From a solvent entity. From a solvent entity.
There were lots of customers charging back to FTX US every day, attempting to ACH in and then retroactively cancel those. Those were solvent customers, although dicks. I don't know the details of this system, but in general, U.S. fiat transfers are quite messy, and for both ACH and credit card related transfers, it is very difficult to have confidence in a transfer until as long as a month after it's been initiated. So that is a mess.
Sam, can I ask you a question? And like, I don't want to interrogate you and ask you specific questions, but try to understand 29-year-old dealing with the collapse of an empire, which affected probably in excess of 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 million people and a whole industry around it.
I wish we had that many
knocking
customers.
Off billions.
But
okay, but still, I mean, your customers, etc. But okay, millions of customers. Trying to understand, as a 29-year-old, who was around you? Who were the 5 people that you were calling and speaking to? And I'm trying to get a feel for the type of discussions that were happening as this whole thing started to collapse. Trying to get a feel for what were the top 5 numbers that you were calling? And I'm trying to get a feel for what they were telling you to do.
So it's a good question. And, there was a group of employees, working around me to try to do what we could. I was calling a number of prospective funders to investigate, potential opportunities to.
But who were your confidants? Who were the people that were guiding you? Like, I know when something happens to me, I've got 5 people in the office who are really close to me, and I know who they are, and they're partners, and they know that they're brothers for life. Who were you phoning? Were you phoning Caroline? Were you speaking to Gary?
Gary, and Gary being a childhood friend and a co-founder as well. Sam, I'd love to know more about his involvement.
So, I mean, I was calling basically, calling and or speaking to in person, primarily other core employees of the company, other employees who had, relevant stakes in it, who had, relevant thoughts, but it was, as the core employees were the bulk of who I was, counseling with. Then I did call, some external advisors, a few key investors. I called a few.
What about Caroline? What about Caroline? Were you speaking to Caroline during this whole thing? I mean, were you guys aligning on exactly how much money Alameda had and what the value of the positions was? Because, ultimately she was a CEO. I mean, how many times where was she on the list? In terms of frequency, was she number 1? Was she number 3? Was she number 5?
She was not physically in the same place as me when this is happening. So there were, a fair number of phone calls, to do exactly what you said. Like, as soon as this happened, one of the first things that we said was we need to know exactly what the deal is with not just Alameda's balances and positions on FTX, but everywhere. We want to know exactly what funds there are. We want to know, whether a margin call will be able to be hit. We want to know how long it would take to deliver those. And so there were certainly a lot of conversations, with her around that. Although she wasn't physically in the Bahamas when this was happening. And so I was, speaking more frequently in some sense to the employees who were there.
What about Dan Friedberg?
I don't want to, I think, go into where specific employees' heads were at, just because I think that's for them to talk about it if they want to.
But was he one of the top 5, or was he one of the top 5 people that you were? I mean, he was a big advisor, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a big employee of the company, a big part of our legal team. I think that everyone sort of in those positions were people I was trying to consult with, and I don't want to sort of go into details of where they were at unless they kind of give me permission to do so. But you can look through who were, the core developers, the core people on the legal side, the core people on the ventures M&A side, and on customer support, VIP support. Like, all of those people were sort of huddling around to some extent, and trying to figure out like what the right things to do were. But at the same time, I was not as communicative to some of those as I wished that I had been. I was, including some people on that list. And I think in retrospect, that was a failing of mine as well. I was very nervous to say something company-wide that, both because I wanted to make sure I didn't say something that I didn't believe and I wasn't sure what was happening. Like I was trying to figure it out in real time, but also because at some point, everything that I said started leaking out pretty quickly. And so it sort of broke down the ability to have that much of a distinction between company-wide communications and public communications. But I think in retrospect, I wish that I'd just been, saying what I knew when I knew it pretty transparently and accepted the fact that I was going to guess wrong sometimes and the fact that a lot of it was going to get out publicly, because I think I owed it to the employees who had been fighting with us for years to tell them what I knew when I knew it, even if I wasn't confident in it.
All right. Chet, I'll let you continue with the questions.
Yes. So Reuters reported $10 billion in funds. We really need to get back to this point. The $10 billion in funds were transferred without FTX customer knowledge to Alameda from FTX. Ellison herself said this in a statement, right? So is it true, or that you or the team had management of the controlling owner, right there, move these funds regardless of method from FTX to Alameda?
So I do think that there was, Alameda ended up with a substantial margin position open on the exchange. I think that, just the over collateralized margin position was a fair bit of it. I think that the avenue that Rand talked about with the historical wire transfers was part of it as well. I think, you add those up and I think you probably get to most of it. Although again, I don't have all the data right now, so that's sort of piecing it together. And a lot of these
where did the funds come from that Alameda was able to margin?
Sorry, when we say that they're able to margin.
Yes, because that margin is a loan, effectively, correct?
Yep.
Alameda. Where did the funds come from for that loan?
They were, and the collateral came from assets that Alameda owned, and the liabilities were, a short margin position open on FTX, coming from the assets that FTX had.
And how did you know this much about this move, even though you said you didn't know there was that much on the sheets?
Oh, a lot of these are things that I have pieced together after the fact that I did not know at the time or was not fully aware of at the time. This is sort of a hodgepodge of things that I knew, things that I didn't know but have since found out, and things that I'm guessing at given what I've been able to find out, but I'm not entirely confident in.
Were FTX consumers made aware of this?
But Sam.
Yep.
Chet, just before I want to go on that specific point. Alameda, is it possible that Alameda was withdrawing real dollars from FTX and instead putting FTT as collateral? So almost taking FTT, putting it as collateral, and then withdrawing real dollars in exchange as against that FTT collateral?
Yeah, a lot of clients were doing that. I do believe Alameda was doing that as well and was doing that for a substantial size.
Yeah, the size that I saw was more than they were supposed to have as unlocked tokens. Do you think it's possible that maybe they were leveraging more tokens than they had unlocked?
I don't believe it's more than were unlocked, because all FTT tokens are unlocked at this point. There are separately, so I think that what CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap sort of denoted as circulating tokens, I believe that was effectively not counting FTT tokens held on FTX. I think that's roughly how it was implemented, that it was because it's just done by looking at a set of blockchain addresses, and we're basically taking all tokens except for those on some specific subset of blockchain addresses. And I think what that was doing was just excluding at least some, if not all, of FTX's wallets from that calculation, and probably had been for a little while. So I think that the circulating supply calculations on CoinMarket and CoinGecko were, they're displaying a particular thing. I don't think that thing was necessarily what was the most intuitive thing, but all FTT had been unlocked for a little while.
Thanks, man.
And you stated in your text, leaked on Vox, that you knew deposits from FTX consumers were essentially lent out to Alameda, and that Alameda then invested with these funds, correct?
Something roughly like that.
Okay, and so you then would have had to been aware of that happening. In that report now by Reuters that we referred to back, it also stated up to $2 billion of those funds are now missing. When Reuters asked you about this, no clarity was given. In fact, you responded with 3 question marks. So I'm asking you in front of our audience here, the live crypto audience here, where did that $2 billion go?
I'm so confused. So first of all, I didn't say knew as of when that was happening. It's not clear to me what you were saying there in terms of when I knew that. But
I'm not sure that I asked you a question, Sam. Can we just stick on that? I'm trying to keep this to where we can keep it very cordial and really inform the audience. So, in that report, it said $2 billion of those funds are now missing, right? From the 10 billion, they were released up to 2 billion, at least 1 to 2 billion, gone from the balance sheet, disappeared. No one knows where they're at. Where did that $2 billion go?
I have no idea what that's referring to.
Okay. So you had no oversight of that much money being able to just disappear from one of your firms.
Wait, I'm not sure. Sorry. I'm not sure I'm even agreeing that is what happened. I'm confused by that statement.
There's a report from Reuters that says that up to $2 billion of the $10 billion that was moved, that you just said you knew was moved.
Which $10 billion that was moved?
The $10 billion that was moved to FTX without customer knowledge from Alameda to FTX.
The
$10 billion that we were just talking about, that you just said that you knew we were talking about. I don't understand the confusion.
I'm not sure about a 10 billion number. Sorry, if you could point me to this article, I think it would help.
Yes, anyone feel free to pin that Reuters article to the top of the space. So, all right. So we'll move past that for right now, and I'll go back to that in a second. So in October 2021, you conducted a raise for FTX, correct?
I mean, there are raises over the course of 2021, yeah.
Okay, but you did a specific raise with Sequoia and some others. 69 investors to be precise, including Sequoia, which called it a meme round. How much was that raised for?
I don't remember how much that round was. Was that the 400 million round, roughly?
Yeah, $420 at $420.69 million dollars raised from 69 investors, which is quite called a meme one. What were those funds used for?
Acquisitions.
Did you take any of that money?
Who is you here? Is you
SBF, Sam, the person I'm talking to? Did you take any of that money?
To my knowledge, that was used for acquisitions for FTX.
According to FTX financial records, internal records reviewed by the Wall Street Journal, actually 3/4 of that raise, $300 million, went directly to you from you selling some of your stake in the company. Where did that $300 million go?
Oh, sorry. The particular $300 million from the resale, that I'm not sure that's that same round that you're talking about. I think that it may have been that one. My memory is it was a different, but you might be right. But either way, that was or slightly before that, I had bought Binance out of their stake in FTX for a few $1 billion. And then had resold a small portion of that secondary to investors. So it went to recouping the costs from buying Binance out.
Okay, and you said you didn't conduct any risk management at FTX and Alameda in all essence. When you said this in the New York Times Dealbook Summit yesterday, correct?
I may have said I did I don't remember exactly how I phrased it, but I did way less than I should have.
You said essentially there was none. When you pitched your firms to accredited U.S. investors, did you tell them there was no risk management in place?
So there was some risk management in place. I myself did very little there. I wish that I had done way more, and I myself did very little in terms of appointing anyone to do it. Now, there was a lot of risk management that was in place in terms of automated, risk management systems. But there was not, in retrospect, good oversight of this. That was a big mistake. I don't believe that I made any material misstatements to prospective investors, although obviously I can't, I don't have recollection of everything that I said. Everything that I said, I
What
thought
did
to be
you
true.
What did you present to them as like the risk management profile of FTX when you pitched to them?
I don't remember.
Was that part of it?
I don't remember detailed conversations about it. I'm not sure there weren't. There were a lot of conversations that happened. I'm not sure there weren't, but I don't particularly remember many.
So there weren't a lot of due diligence processes that took place?
And I think that there were due diligence on some things. I think there's a lot of due diligence done on. My sense
I think
is
we lost Sam again.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back.
You're back. You dropped out 5 seconds. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, continue, Sam.
My sense is, and I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, but my sense is roughly that when people were doing their diligence here, that prospective investors were thinking of it primarily from the perspective here. They were looking at the upside here. They were looking at, what could the business become? How could it grow? That's what you generally do as a venture investor. And if you are, primarily concerned about, the downside of venture investment, that probably means it's an investment that you don't want to make and aren't going to bother investigating in the first place.
So, so the point that you're making is that they didn't need to look into the risk management profile?
I'm not necessarily saying they didn't need. I mean, I don't want to make a statement about what they needed to or didn't need to do, but I think from their perspective, that they saw themselves as, I would guess, as primarily looking into what is the upside of this business, and
okay. And did I lose you there?
Yeah,
sorry,
but
it stops.
But at the end of the day, like,
okay.
Obviously, I don't want to talk for them. Like, they should talk for themselves.
Okay. And did you ever update your investors on the status of your risk management profile?
I don't remember having like a specific, update specifically related to that. I don't remember everything that's been said, but I'm not sure exactly what you're getting at there, or if you're asking like, did I have a special session where called like update of risk management? Like, no.
Did you have any regular meetings with your investors?
Yeah, we would have a call every few months to talk about the business.
Okay, and the ways that you were controlling customer assets or anything like that just didn't come up, is what you're saying?
I don't think it particularly did.
Okay, so that interesting. Now, yesterday in the New York Times Dealbook Summit, you made an interesting statement. So it kind of stuck out to me. You said you, quote, marked the assets Alameda used as collateral. How then were you not aware of the size of Alameda's FTT collateral then? And wouldn't this mean that you had access to Alameda's bookkeeping?
Sorry, you said that at the Dealbook Summit, I said...
You said that when you were asked about
Yep.
the marking of the assets
Yep.
and whether they were marked properly. Do you remember that question from Sorkin?
Vaguely, yeah.
Okay. And you responded saying that with Alameda Research, you marked those assets, and that would mean that you were the one who had determined the price of them on the book, correct?
We had algorithms which determined the price of those on the book.
Okay, so then what did you mean by you had marked the assets at Alameda?
I think I was... so I don't remember the exact phrase that I said. It may have been me just saying, like, we as in, like, FTX, the product, were marking all assets to mark prices. But I'm sorry, I actually don't remember exactly what I had said then.
Okay. But I said to you that you had marked the assets. That is something that you said directly in response to his question as to whether you thought that they were marked properly. And you felt that you might not have marked them properly while you were marking them at Alameda, up against everything else. But in doing so, that would mean that, like, that is access to the books, is it not?
Sorry, so this is, to be clear, marking the assets of Alameda on FTX, right? Looking at the collateral that Alameda held.
No, this is just marking Alameda's assets. You didn't say anything about FTX specifically assets or Alameda's assets on FTX. You were specifically mentioning how much was marked as far as the collateral of Alameda.
Yeah, but I think that was implicitly the collateral that it had on FTX is my memory of what that was referring to. But I mean, either way, sorry, I can talk about what I actually think here.
Okay.
Which is that that you know, in general, like, FTX was marking assets to what their mark prices were, and that when I was thinking about the risk profile of large positions on FTX, and specifically of Alameda's position, which I was also surprised by the size of in retrospect. But in addition to that when I was thinking about not from a formal marking perspective, but from a just in my mind, how do I think about this? Is this something I feel nervous about? Is this something that I need to be investigating more perspective? That I was substantially underestimating what crash risk would look like. And I was thinking about, a 50% haircut as a substantial, very large haircut, rather than as, possibly even an underestimate of what would be necessary for a short period crash in some circumstances. So, I think it was, I certainly think that I made some big mistakes there in how I was thinking about it.
Okay.
Sam, sorry, it's running again.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to. There were a couple of accusations about the way that you ran the exchange, and I really want to try and get to the bottom of it. One of the accusations was someone that went onto BitBoy show. I'm not sure if you heard the show, but he mentioned that FTX was creating more tokens than there were in circulation, or more tokens than they were given for their market making role, almost creating synthetic tokens and trading in these synthetic tokens that they never really had. And he had some really convincing evidence. He showed a little bit of like on-chain data in terms of, the number of tokens that they sent to FTX versus the number of tokens in FTX and the tokens that were returned. And his accusation was that FTX was trading synthetic or fake tokens to manipulate price. Do you think that could have happened?
Sorry. So I think that I frankly don't know actually exactly what you're referring to there. I'm sorry, did not hear that particular one. I'd love to look into that more if you could send me a link to that and get back to you on that. But an FTX.
But let me just explain it to you again. Let me just explain it to you. Like for example, when a token gets listed in an exchange, sometimes the token would be required to give the exchange to lodge certain tokens with the exchange in their role as a market maker. And this specific project claimed that you were selling more tokens than you had as a market maker. And when the time came for FTX to return the tokens to the project, there weren't enough tokens. And I'm just trying to understand, do you think that it could be possible that maybe you guys created, call it fake synthetic tokens, fake tokens, that kind?
So I think you're probably talking about Alameda there, not FTX, and I don't know the details of that. I'm sorry, I wasn't running Alameda, and but I can try and look into that.
Simon, I know you had a question as well.
Okay,
right,
Simon. No, maybe it would be good to look at some of the key events, because obviously we've gone quite deep here into the specifics around. I think maybe some of the things leading up to what got here, starting at the Luna situation, a lot of people don't have real clarity on people's involvements in that. So one of the, Sam, it would be great to hear your perspective on, a lot of people believe that there was some efforts from people really exposed to Luna, to try and save Luna or and there was some renegs of certain agreements. My understanding was Celsius, Galaxy, Almeida. Could you share with us any of the things that were happening between those that were significantly affected, Because obviously this is the start of the story.
So I actually know surprisingly little about the Luna side of this. I don't, like, to my knowledge, neither FTX nor nor Alameda were particularly involved in Luna. Obviously the market crash was quite relevant for them in the industry as a whole. But I don't think that there's that much specific, if any, specific Luna involvement. I think that there were I guess I think that, like, there were a lot of, there are obviously a lot of blowouts in, like, borrow lending desks around then that came from sort of secondary exposure to Luna, flowing through Three Arrows and other places. But I don't know much outside of that.
Do you know, like, anyone that made significant money from the Luna collapse? Was there a way of, like, shorting the stable coin on using any of the products on FTX?
I think there are probably a lot of good arbitrages to do. Like, I do think that is likely the case, and I think that things were just, like, not trading really exactly in line for most of that period. So, I think there are really good trades to do then.
Did you have any, like, meetings yourself or anyone in the team about, like, with like Alex Majinski, people from Celsius, Novogratz, or any of these people that were deeply affected by it? Was there any kind of meetings that about where people were trying to figure out what to do? Because there's like rumors that when Celsius decided to try and get out for some of their clients, that was like a renege of some kind of agreement, and that upset a lot of people. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. Obviously I had some meetings with, like, borrow lending firms around that time, around the troubles they were facing, but I don't unfortunately know anything about things specific to really, like, the Luna side.
So I've got Simon. I've just sent you through a username. Chairman, I'll let you ask your question, man. Thanks for patiently waiting. Simon, I've sent you a username. Do you mind? Because my Spaces is glitching. Can you send them an invite up? I've just sent you the username. So to send an invite up, you got to click on the icon at the bottom, guests. Click on speakers and click on invite speakers and add the username. But Chairman, I'll let you ask your question, man.
Yeah, Sam. Would you be willing to go on Up Only, hosted by Kobe and Ledger Status?
Potentially. I suspect that I have been messaged about that. I'm sorry. I'm still digging through my my backlog of messages. But I'll try and put that on schedule.
Don't come on. You gotta go on it. Come on.
I've got another question for you as well, Sam. The tweet. So while Simon invites a guest to ask you a couple of questions, and I know you have to go over in about 5 to 10 minutes. There was a tweet on 11th of October. At some point, I might have more to say about particular sparring partner, so to speak. But glass houses. So for now, all I'll say is, well played. You won. Most will assume this refers to CZ, and would love you to elaborate on this. It's been a while since the tweet.
Yeah, it was. Look, mostly I screwed up, and like, I feel incredibly bad about that, and it hurt a lot of people. And whether or not it matters, I'm going to do what I can to try and make it right. And I don't want to try and deflect responsibility from that. Obviously there are other things that also contributed to what happened, and there was a pretty sustained PR assault, which I underestimated, and underestimated the impact of, and underestimated the execution of, and I think that was quite impactful, and was what sort of lit the match here. But that doesn't change the fact that I wasn't on top of my shit.
Hey Mario, since he's leaving in 5 or 10 minutes, can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, man. While we bring up the guest, go ahead.
Fantastic. Hey Sam, Did you or any of your business entities or family members ever make any donations to political parties or politicians on the Bahamas?
I'm not sure, not to my knowledge.
You can't just say that answer that with yes or no.
I don't know of cases where we did. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily know if like someone had at some point made some donation on behalf of some entity. But like I don't know of that having happened.
Okay. Have you and your lawyers been in touch with the U.S. Department of Justice about your case?
I can't talk about, any specific communications or lack thereof with specific, regulatory agencies. But obviously we'd be, looking to engage constructively if and when that were to happen.
The reason why I'm asking is in several interviews you pointed out that FTX US has enough funds to pay US customers.
Yes.
Is that a strategy to ensure that the US Department of Justice doesn't charge you with a crime because the DOJ doesn't have jurisdiction over foreign FTX customers?
I mean, it's a true fact. It's like FTX US was in fact a segregated business, and it didn't have any of the properties that led to the issues on FTX International. And so, to my knowledge, it is solvent, and that doesn't take away what happened on the international platform. But I don't know, at least it's something.
Have you transferred funds to FTX US before the bankruptcy to enable this defense strategy?
No, FTX US was, to my knowledge, always solvent.
In some of the recent interviews, you used the phrase, "I don't have the details," 116 times. Why is it that you know so little about your own companies or even about the real estate deals that you facilitated for your parents?
So, many of these things were things where I was not the one who was primarily doing them. And then many of these things are things where there exists data that would make it entirely possible to answer these questions. But unfortunately, I don't have access to that data right now. And you could ask the Chapter 11 team to try and get access to such data that might help answer some of these questions. But I don't have that data about my the companies that I started right now.
Okay.
I see. Kim, if we can give CoffeeZilla the mic after this question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, Kim. Last question, CoffeeZilla. The mic is yours.
Two more things really quick. So you keep saying that you want to help your customers getting their money back. What are the concrete steps that you are taking?
So, I mean, look, a lot of this isn't in my control right now, and a lot of this is going to be up to the global administrators and regulators who are involved. But I'm happy to be of assistance to any of them any way that I can, and in any way that they want me to be. But I would be excited to be, to the extent that I could help find help put together any ways, or be a part of that to help make make customers more whole by probably by there being more funds for them to have access to.
CoffeeZilla, the mic is yours, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I just wanted to quickly ask, so there's this big question about this $8 billion that went into some kind of a stub account. If I just want to get some clarification on this, from my understanding, what you're basically claiming is that back when FTX didn't have banking, you'd use Silvergate to have people to wire money to Alameda Research and then credit them on the FTX side, but you didn't actually account for that money going back to them. So essentially you had like $8 billion come into FTX you didn't have on the books, technically. I mean, can you explain more how that worked? Because it seems like such a key part of this whole thing. And so far we've gotten like very vague things about stub accounts. Just try to be as specific as you can on how that actually happened.
So, and again, some of these are things I'm trying to piece together that I don't have the full answer to, but I think that part of it was, I believe that there was correct FTX accounting in terms of the audited financials, But that at least I can say that when you sort of pulled up, on a dashboard, what the accounts look like, it would not have, it wouldn't have displayed, those transfers, and it wouldn't have displayed the balances related to those, which meant that it was, that the sort of what you would naively see as the relevant, it's the relevant sort of position size was quite a bit smaller than what the full position size was.
Specifically, you're talking about the funds that went into Alameda that was credited to FT on the customer side on FTX.
Yeah,
you're saying that basically when you looked at your dashboard, Alameda was using those funds to trade perhaps, but that ultimately you couldn't see that on the Alameda side because there was some kind of an accounting problem where there was a mix up with where it was credited. Is that the story?
Yeah, it's something roughly like that, or at the very least that the common displays of it did not include that piece of the accounting.
A real quick second follow up. So I've talked to a few Alameda insiders, and I've kind of run them by your story of things. I think you probably are aware. I'm pretty skeptical, and one of them, when I told them could it be that Sam wouldn't know about this? Somebody who worked with you, and they actually they laughed and they said, "There's no way he's claiming to be stupid now when he was like this genius wonder kid." And so my sense of things is, how do you explain this? How do you explain the fact that some of the people who worked with you for years, your employees, have come out and said, there's no way he didn't know about these backdoors. There's no way he didn't know what Caroline was doing when you guys were very close. The offices were right next to each other. I mean, how do you expect us to believe this story you're spinning?
I mean, I don't know what to say. I had a lot going on, and I was spread thin. I was a bit less grounded than I had been before, and I lost track of a lot of important things, and I think that those
hang on one second. I think spread thin is one thing, right? I think things can get out of hand, but we're talking about a fundamental understanding of whether Alameda was commingling funds with FTX. I mean, I saw your Stephanopoulos and Sorkin interview, and you're pretty categorical that you had no idea that you were mingling funds. So that's what I'm asking about, not did you know exactly what was happening on November 7th or 8th? I mean, I can understand sort of things getting out of control, but we're talking about the most fundamental grasp on how your business worked. You're telling us you had no idea.
I was not aware of a lot of what was going on. I was vaguely aware that some of these systems existed. I had no details of them, and I was not spending much time and on looking at position risk management. It was a big mistake.
I mean, you're right.
Right, Sam. I've just got I've just got a DM. Sam has to leave. So guys,
Wait, can I, Mark? Can I ask
guys, guys, I just got to end it, guys. So because Sam has been DMing me nonstop about having to leave, and I don't want to just drop out for the last 10 minutes, saying I have to leave. So Sam, the last question I wanna end it with is there's two camps right now. One camp is looking at this and saying, Sam. All right. So guys. So on one side, the audience, I'm looking at the comments, is like, hey, Sam is at least speaking despite lawyers telling him not to, and looking at this in a very positive light. On the other side, people are saying your answers are very calculated. You're dodging any tricky questions, and this is all part of a plan to paint yourself in a better light. And I do have to admit, there are some answers where they're very, very calculated, and you try to dodge them in one way or another. So to conclude it from my end, what's next? What's next for you in the next few weeks? What can we expect? And what can FTX customers expect? Because you did say that FTX US, they should be made whole. FTX International, I think 30 cents on the dollar. what can the people that were hurt by this, there's some comments about people, kind of hurts me to say this, but, talking about ending their life. And we've had some of these people on stage. What can they expect over the next few weeks and months? And that question is for Sam, just for all other panelists, please. Go ahead, Sam.
I mean, look, I'm incredibly sorry about what happened, and I know that doesn't change anything. I'm gonna do what I can, even if that's not much. But at the end of the day, hopefully, hopefully there will be pathways that will be able to get more funds back for users. Hopefully there will be pathways that open up withdrawals where they can be, and that maximize the value ultimately that users can get. But in the end, that's a lot of that's not going to be up to me. I'm just going to try and be helpful where I can there. But I'm sorry.
Sam, you keep saying you can do what you can. What you're going to do as much as you can. You said it when the liquidator, when you went into Chapter 11. I'm trying to understand in your head, what do you think you can do in your current position, given the fact that the liquidators on both sides, well, the liquidators on the US side have said that you're no longer involved and that you no longer speak on behalf of the company. And I genuinely believe that you really want to help. I'm just trying to understand in your head, when you talk about doing whatever you can and trying to do it, what do you think is in your hands?
I am sorry, I'm very late for next call, so I do have to hop off now. But all I can do is I can be helpful to all the teams who want me to globally, and I'm going to continue to do that if and when I'm asked, and look for other ways over time that I can hopefully help contribute. But yeah, there's a limit to how much different groups are going to want me to, and I understand that.
Mario, can we keep the space open after Sam drops?
Yeah, we will. So after just for everyone, hold on. Hold on. Just want to say, because I know, Sam, you're just about to jump off. He just jumped off. So we do have insiders with important, we do have insiders with bombshell news. They've been investigating the matter for months, I think about 9 months. And they have a lot of findings, and they haven't mentioned earlier. They're coming on stage now. We're about to bring them up. So Romy will send you their details if you can invite them up. They will be sharing details that nobody knows yet. So that's something I've been talking to them for a long time, and they finally agreed to come on stage and share it. So they're about to come on stage. But yeah, Alex, you were saying?
I mean, I just wanted to say, it was a bit frustrating, to be honest, because I think Sam was running circles, frankly, around a lot of people on stage, and we should have been delving deeper. Two things in specific that he's doing, and I think everyone in the crowd needs to be aware of this, not just for this space, but for future media appearances. The first thing he's doing is he's basically taking advantage of all these complicated side narratives that don't matter. The only thing that matters was that he basically went and he misappropriated customer funds and basically took those funds and lent it to a hedge fund that he fully owned and then used FTT to back it up. And anytime he tries to get away from that, it's really important in these interviews that people dive deep, and we need people with domain knowledge on how exchanges work and how, frankly, finance works to keep digging on that, because we let him slither out of that way too much.
And any particular points, Alex, if you want to comment on particular points that were mentioned.
I highly agree with that, Alex. The way it was managed when
Alex,
trying to go into deeper questions.
Hold on, guys.
But yes, go on.
Guys, Alex, do you want to continue just any specific points? And I'll get you to speak, Chairman, right after, while we bring up the two special guests. Any specific points you want to mention for anyone listening? Specific lies that you want to address?
Yeah, so I mean, I pinned this tweet by Jesse, who obviously runs Kraken, and I think would have been a great person to keep drilling on that. But basically, when he actually started talking about how the margin trading system works at FTX, that just wasn't correct. He was basically saying that anyone could come in. I'm going to read Jesse's point because it's, I think, really valid, and it was literally
please do.
So for everyone, please pin the top tweet and like and retweet that to get more visibility. But basically, he said that, how the exchange worked was that it was a net account equity model. So people could borrow against client funds, right? And then he would print FTT, which is a Vapor token, against it, okay? And then he said, if the quote Sam said was, if you add it all up and you counted the negative balances as 100% recoverable, then we were fully solvent. That makes no sense. You can't just go borrow like 10,000 worth of Bitcoin and then print FTT against that to collateralize it and then say that you're fully solvent. That is fraud. And like that was like the problem that like he keeps slithering away from, in my opinion. And like frankly, that's the only thing that matters. Like, yes, all these side things that he's doing with regulators or all these other aspects are problematic, but that is where the fraud lies.
Well, I mean, I think
Alex
he
is
admitted it when
absolutely
I
right.
asked
I just want to
him.
say real quick, I don't know who said like, oh, I believe you have like good intentions here. SBF has only one intention, which is to save himself from jail. Let's all keep an eye on that, because if you want to read into his statements, everything is said with the idea that he's trying to paint a narrative of himself, that he made an embarrassing mistake, that although he's this genius who went to these top tier Ivy League schools, worked on Jane Street, wooed everybody from BlackRock to Sequoia, all of a sudden he's an idiot the second he's committed fraud, right? We're supposed to believe he didn't know what was going on the company he started and ran for years. We're supposed to believe he didn't know what was going on right across the street. I mean, how stupid do we have to believe a narrative like that? It's completely insane. But people are like kissing his ass saying, oh, I believe you're doing the right thing. No, he's done enough. He's helped enough. He needs to take a sideline. He needs to go to jail, and people need to get whatever pennies they're going to get back from this whole thing. He's lied from the very beginning. I'm like shocked by the credulity people have in relation to this guy. They just like suck up whatever he's saying. Nearly everything out of this guy's mouth is a lie, except where it lines up with him not going to jail, and then he might tell the truth. But every single thing he says is with the aim of not going to jail, and everyone needs to remember that.
I don't know if you were there in the beginning.
I would like to add something to that, if I may. I would like to add that I'm disappointed how this whole thing was set up, because my first question and how throwing everyone else under the bus.
Kim, sorry, go back. You dropped out for about 4 or 5 seconds. Can you go back 4 or 5 seconds? What you're saying?
Yeah, so I'm disappointed how this whole thing was running, because my first question went right to the meat of it, where he is basically saying he had no idea what happened with customer funds, and he's throwing Caroline under the bus and his partners under the bus, and I was muted, moved down, and removed as a speaker, and there was such a crucial question. And then, Mario, I sent you a couple of important questions that you said you would ask, and you never did. And then you said, when you are done with your questions, we get to ask him questions. But at the end, you said there's only 5 to 10 minutes left. It's really not nice how this whole thing was managed, because there were so many important questions that were left unanswered. And I'm really disappointed.
Bro, I do, Kim. I've got, you know how many people telling me on the panel, I've got more important questions that are unanswered. I don't have 5 hours to ask all the questions. I think we did a better job. If you go back to New York Times, if you go back to Good Morning America, compare these questions to the questions they asked and the fluff pieces they had. So we tried our best, considering the amount of speakers I wanted to ask questions. I have 50 questions. I asked 5 of them, considering there's only so many I can ask. So Chet does a lot of interrogations. Yeah. So he was trying to pin him on a few things as well. Rand had great questions and brought questions from BitBoy as well. So I think, all of us have more questions. I have more questions I'm annoyed I couldn't ask as well. So it's something that, it's a point that we can all make.
But guys, I think to Coffee's point, we got him to admit that the money was double accounted for in Alameda and on FTX. He literally admitted it when I asked him the question. I said to him, is it possible that people were depositing money into Alameda, no money was flowing between FTX and Alameda, and people were trading as if they had money, and therefore you were double accounting on the money? And he pretty much said, yeah, that could have happened. That is probably what happened. I mean, beyond that point, he admitted that Alameda was taking money and they were crediting people on FTX. And then Alameda was still using the money. So they pretty much were creating fake money on FTX. He admitted it. Go back. I've got this thing on YouTube. Yeah, I'm going to cut out that.
Rand kept taking it back to that key point. And we did get to the key point, which is that the spot and futures were commingled. And the bit that Jesse was trying to, that we found out after, on order book peer-to-peer. So we got the key thing out, which is that it was all commingled. It was a mess, and there was no
There's
Spot, and he said that Spot, I made him agree to two things. One is that Alameda and FTX were commingled, and not only that they were duplicating funds. So you would put your money into Alameda, and you would get $1 would be deposited into Alameda, and that dollar would reflect as a $1 balance on your account, but the money wouldn't flow from Alameda into FTX, which means that every time money came in, you were basically funding Sam Bankman-Fried's hedge fund while he was crediting you with fake money on the exchange. He admitted to that. The second thing that he admitted was that there was no separation between spot clients and futures clients, which means that effectively there was commingling of funds, and that is a fraud. That's a fraud in any country. That's a fraud in Bahamas. It's a fraud in the USA. It's a fraud anywhere in the world. That's the second thing that's the second thing that he admitted. So I think we pretty much got out of him 80% of what went wrong here. 80% of what went wrong here, we've pretty much got, and he admitted.
I wanted to dig more into the fiat Silvergate, whether it was issuing stable coins, because I didn't fully get all of that. Did you get it all?
No, yeah, I think, yeah.
Because he was talking about how Alameda was just a gateway for fiat, but then how does that relate to all the
Ryan, just quickly, Ryan, your co-host, I have a glitch. Can you check the speaker's request and bring up Hussein? He's the person.
I have invited Hussein, and what it says on my side is it's asking me if I want to cancel the invite. I can try again.
Okay, yeah. So there's Nick Pett, and then I'll send you the two handles. So they're the two people that were investigating FTX and Alameda for about 9 months, and the findings they have, which they shared with us, pretty insane. So I've been. I'm
gonna try and bring them up. I'm gonna just send you a screenshot because I actually have.
I've sent you both their handles, and see if they have their hand up as well. They have their hand up as well.
Mario.
I'm gonna cancel current invite. I'm gonna resend the invite. I think that's the easiest way.
Yeah, try that. And guys, so Hussein and Nick, check your DMs, guys. That's how when Rand sends you the invite, that's how you get it. Yeah, Alex and Chairman, go ahead. Alex and Umbrella.
Let's not beat ourselves up too much, man. To get SBF on a Twitter Space to take that many questions, that's pretty incredible achievement. To be fair,
I think we should beat ourselves up because that was really a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, we've achieved nothing. Simon, I'm sorry, but I don't agree.
I think if you go back to the transcript, Chairman and Kim, if you go back to the transcript and you see some of the things that Sam said, and then again compared to the transcript of the other two interviews. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
There's a couple key things.
No offense to Chet, but there are people he spoke 90% of the time, and there are people who are much more qualified on a lot of these topics than Chet is. And you told us we'd all be able to ask 2 questions at the end after you finished your line of questioning.
So first of all, Chairman, I just want to cut in there because I will, obviously, I'm going to protect my own reputation at any point in time. So don't come at me like that, Chairman. First of all. Second of all, what I was going after and what Mario prevented from happening was a massive series of questions that were going to be ran through pretty quickly in order to get to the root of the matter. This is how you actually do investigations, to actually find out what happened. You don't let the person just keep filibustering, keep just flowing, keep putting. He has
That's
about
the same
4 responses. Hold on.
Are you saying your employer fucked up, Chet? Is that what you're saying?
Kim, can you please not right now? So at this point, here's the thing, right? There was an idea of how to actually build this. There was an idea of which questions to actually ask, and some of the questions never got asked. Was the fact that he even said that his parents worked at Alameda. They were both compliance officers, so how did they not catch anything like that? That question was never able to get asked. There's a whole bunch of questions that people don't understand that were actually coming into the fruition, never got a chance to because Mario decided to change up the entire way that the space was going. I'm not happy at all with it, and I'm not pleased.
All right, guys, so I'm trying to bring up Hussein. So how to go with Brian? Did it work? Because they're in the audience.
I have invited, I've got, there's an invite pending for Nick Peterson. And I'm trying to bring in Hussein, but it doesn't find him. I'm trying to add him on, but it's not finding him.
See if you can find him in the audience. Go through the audience, and then
I'm on it.
Yeah,
Mario, can I just
go ahead, Alex.
Have a quick thought on
bro.
Look, I understand it's a highly emotional situation for everyone involved, right? And I think that has kind of spilled over. I think in terms of tangible advice, if one of these spaces is done again, whether Mario by you or anyone in the crowd, I think I'd have 3 pointed pieces of feedback. The first is you need people with certain domain expertise. on the stage. So we really should have someone like a Jesse or someone who has deep technical knowledge of how exchanges work on the stage so that they can drill deeper when Sam basically tries to like feint off of a question. The second is there also needs to be someone technical on here. Like Sam has a degree in physics and a minor in math from MIT. So he can literally use esoteric technical language to throw people off if there isn't someone on the stage that has technical depth, at least as deep as him. And I'm technical, but I'm nowhere near as technical as Sam. I'll be the first to admit that. So that's the first thing, is get speakers with domain knowledge on here, specifically around exchanges and deep technical knowledge. The second thing would be, I get the point Chet was saying, which is, I think we have a lot of people on stage, and frankly, that's why I didn't talk till the very end, because I think it could really quickly go south, and Sam can take advantage of us all interrupting with each other, because it basically makes us look incompetent. And even right now, like, we're starting to turn on each other, which again further helps bolster his case. And then I think just the last thing to keep in mind is, again, we have to understand that Sam is doing this all for a reason. He is not a good person. He is a bad person who very, very likely committed fraud. And I have to say likely because it's an ongoing legal case, right? And he's going to do anything he can to sway public perception. It's very unlikely that he's going to slip up. So I think part of the job here is to, like other people were saying, do not greet him with pleasantries. Do not be like, oh, you're a good person. We literally have to hit him hard, because ultimately it's about shifting social sentiment in these spaces more than anything.
But I think if you want to I think you'll attract more. You'll attract more bees using honey. And the idea is, if you come in and attack him, it's not going to open up. And the idea is that if you encourage him, then he will open up, and he could start asking, some really cool questions. I think the one mistake that we made was that we went out on the attack, and we shouldn't have gone out on the attack. We should have gone out to have a conversation with him, and then when he was feeling more comfortable and less defensive, then we should have perhaps asked him some tough questions.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to bring you Hussein and Nick. I've added you to the group with them, please, Ryan. I know you're trying to bring them up.
Yeah, I'm speaking to them on Twitter. Nick,
try to leave.
Exit
the space.
And then join back with a new invite that I sent you.
Okay, so exit, guys. Nick and Hussein, exit, and then join back. Because there's no invite that makes me speaker. I mean, you're in the group on WhatsApp, by the way, Ryan.
Yeah.
Because I'm really. So this is, for anyone listening, all reporters and stuff, I think this segment is going to be probably more important to you than the interview with Sam, because you've got, everything that they're going to say. They've got facts that they've collated over 8.
I've invited Hussein.
Why didn't you
guys,
have
just 2 seconds.
Guys,
2 seconds. Guys, 2 seconds. So sorry, go ahead, Chairman. And while Ryan, you're trying to bring them up. Go ahead, Chairman.
Why didn't you have these people on when
so they wanted to come on afterwards, so that's a different discussion. We've talked about it in depth on what would be best, and we best for them to come up afterwards and share the evidence. Otherwise, it wouldn't, we wouldn't even have an interview. Did you get it, guys?
I've sent it to Nick. The one to Hussein, on my thing, it says failed to send. It says you can no longer send direct messages to this person.
Yeah, Hussein, you got to leave the space and try to come back in. You got to come up, guys. I'm not going to give up till you come up. If Rand can't bring you up, I'll use my other phone. I'll log in with 2 phones.
I'm trying to.
So Hussein, just for the audience, while Rand's bringing up Hussein and Nick, I won't speak on their behalf and all the information. We had a 2-hour chat just today. And to give you guys an idea, that they came on stage a couple of times. I'm trying to paraphrase what happened. They had a project that was listed on an exchange, liquid exchange. Anyone that was in the space should probably remember the story. They got, there was a lot of unethical things done by Alameda that almost destroyed their business. And since then, they started, it really killed them back then. They launched an investigation that was early, I think it was early this year or end of last year that it happened, when nobody really even looked at FTX. And they launched an investigation. They got a lot of chain analysis guys there, and a pretty big team. And I'm just checking the group to see if they're coming up. So that
okay. So just Nick, Nick's being added as a listener. Nick, just press the button and just wait 2 seconds, and then you'll see if you just wait 2 seconds, there will be a button that says speaker. Just give it 2 seconds. It's glitchy. It takes a while to load.
I'm just messaging them now. Crypto man ran. Yeah. So they since then they launched the investigation and they found things. A lot of them will be pretty crazy allegations for the audience listening, and they'll be pretty clear. They'll tell you the allegations that they can prove, and they've got evidence to prove 100%. And then they'll share the allegations that is more speculative, and they cannot prove, but they're looking into it. So some of it will sound crazy, and I think they'll be open if you DM them. All reporters, you can DM them and ask for the evidence to back up some claims. I know you have to be able to write about it, and they'll be able to share a lot of it. And obviously the speculative ones, you take it as is, as pure speculation, but based on a lot of research. How'd you go, Ryan?
I've sent it, but both of them should have the invite. Both of them should have the invite. They should be ready to join. I did actually ask him that question. He said that it could have been Alameda.
Who did you ask what question?
I did ask Sam if they could have been creating fake tokens, and he said that could have been Alameda.
The synthetic tokens. Go ahead, Kyle.
The whole inflating token supply. This is something that has come out in the past, where let's say that someone deposits, I don't know, let's say 1 million Dogecoin, and that's all that's on an exchange. An exchange, because they're centralized, they can just say that they have 2 million, and this is highly likely what probably happened when in this particular case of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'll be joining the space from my other phone. Let's see how that goes.
I'm trying to.
That's a risk, but I have no choice.
Yeah, I was trying to lead up to naked shorting, but I didn't get there. It's just
you
could, son.
James.
Are they up, or should I have joined from my other phone?
I have invited them both. It says it's not bringing them on in speaker.
Okay, let me chat. I'll send you the username as well, chat, so you can try to invite them. In the meantime, I'll go in from my other phone to try to bring them up. So let me send the username.
Hey, while you're bringing up some people, one of the things that's going to come up was this whole separation between FTX US and FTX International. This is going to create an absolute shit show between creditors. This happened in the Celsius case, where the lawyers used the division between some people, like regulators were sending cease and desist orders to Celsius, and then they bodged together a fake custody service where they never segregated funds. And it created this big divide where there was a bit of funds in custody, what was called custody, and the rest in earn. And then the lawyers used that in order to determine, or they're using it now, that all the funds belong to Celsius, and therefore they could spend them and use them as much as they want. And this is going to, the shit show that's going to happen between the US and international. All the US are going to create an ad hoc group and try and get 100% recovery based upon what Sam's saying. The lawyers are going to use that in order to create division between the international creditors and the US creditors and the Japan creditors. And they're going to use every ounce of that to wage war against creditor to creditor to creditor in order to win prisoner's dilemma and get things exactly what they want. It's a very manipulative technique.
Simon, I want to ask you another question. Do you remember how we did a space once? We had a few people from Celsius, and there was a lot of Celsius were some of the first whistleblowers on Alameda's actions, and there were allegations about Alameda. I'll let you tell us what was that space about, and what was the connection between Alameda and Celsius. And we do have speakers that will come up and talk about it a bit later. If you can summarize it for the audience, because it was a really eye-opening space.
It was just more the Celsius community were the first to really call out Sam Bankman-Fried, because they detected naked short selling, because they knew that all the sell tokens were locked up on the app, and so there was only so much circulating supply. And then they tried to create a short squeeze. The bit they got wrong is that it didn't need to be covered by sell tokens, so everyone got wrecked. But what was important is that they really highlighted to everybody that SBF is a really bad actor. And so we started really asking questions, and I got a reply to him. But it was because of that community that I was one step ahead of this, and their work that was done that. So they really were shouting as loud as possible while everyone was saying FTX is the hero and was bidding on this, and everyone was trying to get them to bid on the companies and save them and stuff. So they detected it, and it was because so many of the sell tokens were locked up on the app. It was a bit easier to detect strange behavior.
I've got good news. I logged in from my other phone, so I'll be inviting them myself. So guys, check from my DMs.
So guys, sorry, I can't hear anyone. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me.
Oh shit, you're on. Yeah.
Yes,
Fuck
excellent.
yeah, fuck yeah.
Finally
All right, perfect, man. I can hear you, bro.
Hey, on that
all
last
right, and
point,
I'll try to invite Nick. Go ahead, Hussein. So just Hussein, I want to do an introduction, bro. What did you go through? What kicked off that investigation? And let's kick it off with some of the things you've been telling me over the last few days and weeks.
So obviously, I don't know who's heard us before, but we went through a situation where Alameda actually basically created counterfeit synthetic coins and traded it to dump our price. They basically dumped our market. John himself from Alameda was meant to be helping us, obviously, as a partner. We went into an agreement with them. Alameda sold themselves as obviously the partner to New Genesis to try to help New Genesis grow. On the launch date, they did everything they could to actually dump the coin. We found the coin being sold for 1 to 2 cents. There was literally about 76,000 coins sold initially. We basically told Alameda we don't want them to do market making anymore and to retract. They agreed. All of a sudden, coins were still on the market, being sold at 1 to 2 cents. We utilized something called Navis, which is New Genesis Artificial Validations Intelligence System. It's very different to our systems were developed for meta processing, so it's a little bit different than your traditional technology. So what happens is the AI actually witnessed very certain things that they did and reported it to us. One of them is creating their own synthetic versions of our coin. The second was trading. There was trade on the network when there was no coins that should have been on the network. Basically very similar to what they were saying about Cell. I'll go into more detail as we go along, but I think if we stick to the factors, right now, I mean, you guys actually got Sam to admit a few things that nobody realized how important it is. I know it didn't go as, the way most people wanted, and Sam is pretty bright and understood how to play this. But he actually did admit that they did have counterfeit coins on their system. I mean, based on the technology anyway, and they were actually selling counterfeit coins. So you actually did bring out some certain things. I mean, once Nick is on board, and what I was trying to say just earlier is Cell wasn't the first. There was a lawsuit in 2017 and a lawsuit in 2019. So there was actually, this is not a problem that actually came out today. This is a problem that actually came out in 2017, and it was actually brought to everyone's attention that that's what they were doing. And then again in 2019, then again with us in 2022.
So yeah, I think what we should do is maybe just I just want to recap what you're saying, because I think a lot of people, you spoke really quickly and I think a lot of people don't really understand what happened, but you launched a project, and part of the project, part of the project that you launched, you used Alameda for some kind of market making services, right?
Yeah. So when we go onto an exchange, the exchange tell you, so Liquid says we can't get listed unless we have a market maker. So Liquid is another asset that's owned by Sam. So they actually introduced us to Alameda Research. Now, Alameda Research became our partner, which is the market maker, which in terms of the agreement we had with them were to sustain a value of the coin until the market picks up. So they're meant to be supporting the project until they're not meant to dump liquidity. They're meant to hold liquidity. And then there's enough buyers, release liquidity so the market is stable. So that was their position.
And what they did was they dumped all your tokens. You realize that they were dumping all your tokens.
They bought 200 million. They bought 200 million new coin on Liquid.
And then you said to them, okay, guys, stop. We don't want you to be the market makers anymore. Stop immediately, and please give us back the tokens. And they gave you back the tokens.
It was a little bit harder than that. We told them, please, you're destroying us. You're ruining our company. You're ruining our reputation. Please, we begged them to stop. So if you look at the video that's out there, it wasn't actually saying, you read the messages, we were begging Alameda to stop. We should just stop it. We don't care. We don't care what happened. We don't care if it's a tech issue. Just please stop it. Right now, you're destroying us. And they just continued, and they just continued, and they just continued.
And I think more importantly here, when they gave you back, once you eventually managed or asked for the tokens back, they were in a position where they couldn't provide the tokens. And I think that gave you that's the point where you realize that what they were doing is they were actually creating fake synthetic tokens, and they were trading these fake synthetic tokens as if they were the real tokens. And Effectively, they were just creating fake tokens and trading fake tokens on the exchange, right?
Correct. It's a little bit more complicated than that, because what happened is our AI witnessed them shifting over assets, which is the real tokens that were sitting down in real wallets, and shifting them out of the sub wallets that were created for customers and put them all into one wallet, which was their wallet. So they took custodianship, well, obviously that's of every single person's new coin, and put it into one single wallet. Now, we're not used to centralized exchanges at that point. So that our AI alerted us that a function was utilized that they had no permission to utilize. So that's where we first went to him and said, what do you guys have done? I mean, why are you guys pulling customers' assets? Why are you guys using the private keys of customers, even though you guys are the custodian? Why are you removing the subcategory, the sub wallets? And why are you creating one singular wallet to hold all assets of customers? Therefore, there is no longer a relationship between a single coin that a customer has and the representation in the wallet that the customer has. So they destroyed the representation in that wallet. That's the first time we realized that these guys are able to, or were operating in a way to actually remove the liquidity from the liquidity pools, centralize those liquidity into a wallet that they only had access to, and therefore we could not determine what customers had what new coin and how much new coin really was on the centralized exchange.
Now, just to be clear, they didn't create a perp for your coin, right? They didn't create a perpetual for your coin.
No, that's other projects we work out. That's not us. Yeah.
Okay, good. So they were so effectively they were effectively trading in. They could create as many tokens as they wanted, and they could trade as many tokens as they wanted because no one was holding it into account.
Correct. The only way that anyone would have ever found out is when people start withdrawing. So when we asked our customers to start withdrawing assets from exchanges, and when we started withdrawing, so I was one of the first to initiate the withdrawal process out of Liquid. And because, okay, you got to understand there's two different parts of this technology. There's the decentralized nature of the blockchain, also the blockchain itself, and then there's a centralized nature. The blockchain will never accept counterfeit coins or synthetic coins. So when you try to withdraw funds, if you cannot withdraw funds out of a system, there's a couple of reasons why. One of the main reasons, or actually it is the main reason, it's not one of the main reasons, is the liquidity is not back to that wallet. So the centralized unit has a representation. It doesn't actually have your crypto, right? So you're creating a representation on a wallet. You aren't actually trading Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything on that centralized unit. So I can add any kind of data points to your wallet. I can give you 1 million Bitcoin. It doesn't really matter. The only time that anyone would ever be able to tell that that Bitcoin was fake or synthetic is when that's withdrawn back to the native chain. So the only time you'll ever be able to realize,
we saw exactly the same thing that happened with Bitcoin. So when people were withdrawing their Bitcoin off Alameda, which was reflected in their accounts as a positive Bitcoin balance, what we then saw was that we saw on chain, we saw that Alameda actually had, or FTX had no more Bitcoin. And
correct.
There were
exactly correct.
Exactly. So they did it. So I think what we did is we got Sam to admit on this call that they were doing that, because I asked him a very direct question.
100%.
I said, could it?
Yeah, and that's the key thing, because even if it's margin or spot, you know, if you're lending your Bitcoin or you got your Bitcoin there, and it's still the same thing.
I don't know. In this conversation, there's two key things you guys got out of him that forget about the rest of the questions, right? Because they're really irrelevant to a crime. They're just governance of how they operate the systems, right? Governance you can play with. You can argue anything for or against a governance system. What you can't argue is simple facts of how they actually the technology worked and how much knowledge the person had of that technology. Now, even though he was playing stupid, he actually showed and demonstrated he actually understood every part of the technology, including from leveraging to how the system operates. So you actually, even though he thought he was outsmarting everyone on this channel, if you sit back now and take bits and pieces of what he said, you'll understand he actually admitted to creating the fraud. And he actually admitted even in the terms of agreements, which I believe he was incorrect anyway. See, under the terms of agreements, they have something called a custodianship, right? Now, they don't call it custodianship. They call it title to your digital assets shall at all times remain with you and shall not transfer to FTX trading. Now, this is a very crucial thing, because this is saying that I'm holding your crypto, not I'm holding FTT. I'm holding your current crypto in custodianship. It is your crypto. It is not ours. We're not going to use it. We're not going to move it. We're not going to give anybody else access to it. So under their own terms of agreements, that they've made it very clear. Now, what he's trying to spin the story is utilizing another part of his terms and agreements, which then talks about when a third party can initiate or utilize that service. And that's what I assume he's trying to use, which loop I was trying to use. Now, the only thing is the third party agreement then requires someone to, or sorry, the person who owns the wallet or the crypto to approve it. Now, there's never been a situation that I'm aware of that someone told him that, you know what, yeah, go ahead, use my crypto, trade it, take it, bank it, cash it out, utilize it.
You know, what I think he's saying though is that when you engage in the margin order book, you can have your Bitcoin in custody, but when you engage in that, you're agreeing to lend it and you're engaging in that transaction. But
Definitely
that
on his
doesn't
spot.
change the backing. That doesn't change the backing equation.
Correct. So one
Definitely
Bitcoin
not
will always be one Bitcoin in the system, and one Ethereum should always, since it's a custodianship relationship, it's not that you give me Ethereum and I'm going to swap it to FTT, right? I'm holding in custody the exact asset or the asset that you gave me. So if I've got one Bitcoin, it doesn't matter if the market crashes. If you're withdrawing your single Bitcoin. It doesn't matter if the Bitcoin's worth 16,000 or 100,000. It makes no difference.
Exactly. The trader's making the loss. It's not the exchange.
Correct.
So if somebody gets wrecked, they get wrecked because they made the wrong directional move. And if they
100%.
did it on leverage, then fine. But it doesn't lead to any loss in the exchange.
Yeah.
The
There
loss
was
in
one
the
thing.
exchange is
There
when,
was,
is what,
guys.
what Rat was trying to say when it stops like miles away from you because you had FTT, there wasn't enough liquidity, and the margin fails. But he wasn't saying that's what happened. He was obfuscating the relationship between the margin and lending your Bitcoin, which should still be backed.
I mean, there's two sides to it. There's two sides to it. There was one side where I actually agreed with him, which is probably contrary to what the public opinion is. But there is a massive loss that the exchange would have taken because the market corrected so quickly. I don't think there's any risk management system in the world that would have tolerated such a big drop without taking some kind of loss.
Only if they had directional risk.
Yes. No. If I had FTT tokens as collateral and I borrowed against the FTT tokens as collateral, and within 10 seconds the collateral halved, then they couldn't sell my collateral to cover the other position.
Yeah.
So
that's the argument that didn't agree. Sorry guys, that's the argument that they actually had the right to start with, to take the asset and then turn it into or swap it to FTT. So you've got to go back to its core basics. Yes. Forget about the governance. Forget about governance. Forget about how they operate. Forget about trying to turn into a bank run. This isn't a bank. Forget the idea altogether. There's an idea of an asset being held in custody for a customer to trade. Right. This is why, and I know I sent earlier questions, but I made the questions very boring and very specific because Sam could not lie around them. He couldn't hide the answer, and it's all specific to terms and conditions and basically how the technology works, and the governance itself is irrelevant. So it doesn't matter if he's trying to argue the fact that, yes, FTT dropped. Who cares? Who gave you the right to take my Bitcoin and swap it for FTT?
And I think the whole thing of a bank run applies to fractional reserve when you have regulatory permission to rehypothecate money and to create money. So the concept of a bank run is not directional if your accounting system's all set up correctly.
Yeah, but I think you guys are missing one point. And again, I want to just try and make sure we all understand this point. So let's say that let's not say FTT. Let's say that I use Bitcoin as collateral and I borrow against my Bitcoin. So I give them a Bitcoin which is worth $10,000 or $15,000 today or $17,000 today, and they allow me to borrow against that Bitcoin 50% of the Bitcoin's value. So I'm allowed to borrow on margin $8,500. The problem is that if Bitcoin goes down below $8,500 in one tick, so if Bitcoin goes from 17,000 to 2,000, the risk management systems don't have an exit point. That's the problem. I think that the one point where I actually realized that there may be something here to what he's saying is that if the risk management systems on the leverage weren't good enough, they would have taken some kind of loss, a big loss, because The risk management systems are tolerant to a certain market move, but if the market moves much quicker than that, then the problem is that they can't adjust the leverage with the borrowed position.
Yeah, you miss the margin call and it goes under collateralized, and that creates a loss when you
exactly
sell it, you lock it in.
Exactly. So that point, I actually believe, to be honest, that maybe they had poor risk management
in FTT during those conditions,
and maybe some others, things like Serum, things like Solana. You know, people were holding Solana. All of a sudden, Solana went from 36 to 12. I don't know if, I mean, again, I don't know what their risk management systems look like, but that one of that portion was actually one point where I realized, you know what, at some point they would have taken a lot of losses as a result of that. The things that were inexcusable,
though, they've taken the losses from assets they should have never used to collateralize for those. So go back. That's why I say go back to its core. Forget about governance. Now we're talking about how they're operating their systems. Go back to the original crime itself. The crime itself is stolen assets. It's assets held in custodianship, and those assets being removed out of custodianship, sold and manipulated and utilized as they wished without the customer's knowledge. So and this is why I say, if we go into governance, we can sit here all day, argue for and against, and Sam will beat all of us in terms of governance because he can structure any governance utilizing the best lawyers in the world, right? There's two different things. The more we open up an argument about governance, the more we open up a chance for Sam to get away with this. So if we stick to bare facts and say, okay, what's the original crime that he held, then we hold him accountable for the crimes he committed. You know, other than giving him loopholes and justifying what he did.
That was the other bit, was trying to get into the...
Mario's back.
Because one of the arguments was that Almeida was the customer. But then they said the reason that only happened was because FTX didn't have a bank account. So then that gets into that whole thing. Well, if it's just a bank account, that's just the fiat part. So where does the crypto come in? And then he was going off on stable coins and stuff. Well, they were issuing stable coins and they were issuer. So I think we missed like a whole digging exercise around that because
we missed. I've got like 6 digging exercises we missed that obviously we didn't have the time for. Simon, I just want to quickly ask Hussein. Sorry to interrupt, Simon. One of the things I wanted to dig into near the end of the interview was others that were involved. Gary Wang, Sam Trabucco. So Gary Wang was the co-founder and CTO, childhood friend of SBF. Sam Trabucco, co-CEO at Alameda, and he left early. I think a couple of weeks after you guys started your investigation or something, which is odd. Then you've got Caroline Ellison, which is CEO of Alameda, and then Dan Friedberg, the shady guy. General counsel and chief regulatory
That's why
officer.
I tried to ask him.
And he's also the family attorney, SBF's family attorney as well.
It's funny how he tried to back away as soon as everyone was okay, but as soon as you got to Dan, it was like a no-go zone.
Can you tell us more? Can you elaborate for the audience about these 5 figures and what you think their involvement is, what you know for a fact, and what you speculate?
Look, the issue is, especially when we come down to Wang and the group, right? We can speculate only based on the technology and how the technology operates. So the one thing that we always say is technology can never lie, right? People will lie, technology can't. So someone created this technology to operate in a certain manner. Now, we understand how this technology completely operates. So from an operational perspective, of course, Wang was involved and Singh was involved. I mean, just look at the money that they took and look at the money that was loaned out to Singh. Who loans out someone $548 million to a developer they've got? But again, a lot of it is not hard proven. So a lot of it is whistleblowers from internal, obviously from Alameda, from FTX, from other companies who actually came out and spoke to us. In the last 6 months, we've had majority of the whistleblowers completely talk to us, and a majority of the projects come to us, and the investigation has been pretty extensive. Now, a lot of the evidence, and I know I've sent you some of the evidence, is pretty large. There's a lot of evidence to go around, and everything suggests that this was a well-orchestrated plan. So the technology itself was actually working in a way for them to be able to create, obviously, transactions within their exchange. But there's 2 different parts to it. There's the internal transactions and there's the withdrawal and deposits. So the withdrawal and deposits is what everyone keeps looking at, which is what happens on chain and that you can actually find out and analyze. What you can't find out is what actually happens internally inside the centralized unit. So this is where these guys came into it. So they've created a system which can operate to allow what happened to happen. So last month, I was on this channel, a few weeks ago, I was was on this channel, and one of the FTX insiders came out and said it's impossible for them to be able to have synthetics or not paired one-to-one relationship. And when we argued, he came up with a term which said they've got a trade engine or a payment engine, which they're utilizing.
And Zero Sum is on stage right now, I think, unless it's glitching for me. Zero Sum, are you still there?
I have to thank him. He's the one that made me aware of exactly what they're doing in terms of
Zero Sum was what he's still there. Yep. Zero Sum is a legend. He's one of the best insiders we've had who gave us hours of his time. And honestly, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, it's because of him I actually was able to determine what they were actually trying to do. And again, this is speculation and not actually proven fact. Because
I'll let him comment since you mentioned him. Zero Sum, go ahead, bro.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think people are kind of on the right gist, right? But when it boils down to it, right, just remember that you can't blow up an exchange, right? That at the end of the day, it's a tech platform, right? It's an execution system. It's meant to execute. The only way you can blow up is leverage and misuse of funds, right? FTX would never and should never obviously operate and trade within its own system. And that's where the big issue comes in, right? He has Alameda, and Alameda is now trading within that centralized exchange, and that's where you can do anything from that point, right? Then you can do things. So what we've seen is the contagion that spread through the market, right? It didn't touch places like Kraken or OKX because these companies operate as purely just as an execution platform. They don't have a trading system attached to it, right? Alameda was that trading system that they were using within FTX. And that's the reason why it's blowing up. I mean, it's as simple as that. But I'll just let Hussein keep going because I don't know what he was about to say. I led him on to, but just continue. But that you are right there, Hussein. Right? It should just be a tech platform that executes trades. It should never have operated within a trading capacity or taken leverage within its own system.
Correct. Even under the terms and agreements, I agree with both. So, when we're saying they're not aware of anything like this ever happening before and Sam having no knowledge, you need to go into, I think it was 2017, November the 20th, if I remember right. There was a case which was brought up against FTX and Alameda, right? And it was about, there's actually one in 17 and one in 2019. So they were already aware of that Alameda. There was already allegations of exactly what we're discussing right now that's happened in 2017 and 2019. So the idea that Sam had no idea it was possible or never investigated something like this or never touched it, I mean, it's just go online and just look up I'll get you the right details. I don't have them in front of me. But it was something filed in San Francisco. I think it was the 4th of November. It was a court filing, Bitcoin manipulation. I think it was Bitcoin manipulation abatement. I've just tried to pull it up. And it was a class action that actually went against FTX and Alameda. So there was one for FTX and then 2019 again, FTX and Alameda. So the claims, and again, Celsius and other one, there's many claims in the past directly that went to Sam that he had perfect knowledge that the accusations of this happening was actually happening. It's not something just happened today.
And guys, from the space you heard now, I know there's you alone, Hussein, sent me like 60 something questions, and I think Nick, your partner who you're trying to bring up, sent me another 25 questions. From the questions we asked and the answers, you did say that there's a few things he did admit, and he said he admitted for fraud. Can you touch on those points again, like the highlights from the discussion that we had, and the points that you think the audience, or at least the press, or anyone that does, journalists or citizen journalists, whatever you want to call them, and that they should press on, in your opinion?
Okay, I can't remember who asked the question. He pushed Sam to actually say that, yes, that they had actually coins on the platform that weren't actually there. So they went back to one-to-one. I mean, the best thing to do, let me pull out the actual script and let me break it down for you guys and comment on each section and explain to you from both the governance, the technology and the terms and condition, how that's completely incorrect. It's easier for me to take it through instead of making a mistake and saying something wrong. What I don't want to do is take justice away from the situation. So, it's better that I actually break it and then actually comment on it as I go through than just to make a comment right now.
I mean, I did get him to admit that they were creating coins out of nothing, or that he said that was possible. I did get him to admit that there was money that was on Alameda, where they were creating the money stayed in Alameda, but they were creating fake coins on FTX. That was the second time that he admitted. I think I got him to admit to 2 or 3 other things which were pretty, I think, criminal in nature. That was the one thing. I was trying to get him to tell me who was around him, and then I was trying to get to see how much he was speaking to Caroline, how much he was speaking to Dan Friedberg and all those guys. But I think the problem is that there were just too many questions flying at him at the time. So I don't think we managed to get to the core of that.
I was really, again, I was really keen to find out more about the other players. And Hussein, you mentioned to me in our call that, I'm going to say these two things. I think they're confidential. You said two things. You said there's definitely other players that play a role, some that we mentioned, some within FTX and Alameda, some outside FTX and Alameda. I'm not sure if you want to mention names now. And the second thing you mentioned is that it's also possible that some people were literally pulling the strings, and some people made this assumption as well. Obviously, we don't know for sure. Do you want to elaborate on those 2 points you said to me earlier?
Okay. Once you understand what was happening, it's much larger in scale than most people realize. Therefore, it cannot be done by a single person, as in Sam. So when we investigate this, I mean, we've been investigating this for a very long time. And I know I've shared a lot of stuff with you, and most of the stuff is pretty solid. And most of the stuff we've actually proven beyond a reasonable doubt, including the transfers given to the, obviously, donations to politicians. But what it is, I mean, we believe, Dan, and again, from our own experience, let's talk about it in a way where they can't say it's incorrect. Let's talk about what happened to us and who bribed us, who gave us money, who offered us, and who was negotiating. So on the first instance, the first person that took over was Caroline, and Caroline straight away came up and basically gave us a bribe to shut up. All right, so she offered us all of a sudden instantly when we went to them, and this is after we started accusing the accusation of counterfeit synthetics, right? So straight away, the first offer they gave us was $600,000. All right, US. Now, to their knowledge, we're nobodies. We have no money. We're a small group. They don't know anything more about us. I don't think they really cared at that time. I think the way they operate, they don't actually do anything, to DD. So for them to come instantly and offer $600,000 in the way they offered was the first indication. Now, obviously, we turned that $600,000 down after we realized what they're actually doing. It was, first of all, we were after compensation for what they caused. Then as soon as we enacted our AIs and we started looking into exactly what they're operating and what we realized, we then turned around and said, okay, forget this. Let's see how much these guys are willing to give and how serious this is. So once we started pushing for more and more, who came over and took over was Dan. So Caroline is your first front. Now, the person to fix the problems, to make sure they go away and to threaten you, and he did. He actually threatened you. Just watch the video. He not only, basically threatened me, he told me that he was going to put me into jail. I'll go to jail if I don't take the bribe.
Which video are you referring to?
There's a video on the New Genesis channel. It's on YouTube. He didn't know we were recording. So obviously they also told, we recorded everything. So we've got videos of every conversation.
Romy, can you please get that video from Hussein so we can tweet it after this?
Yeah,
would be great.
Just jump on YouTube. Just jump on the YouTube channel, New Genesis. You'll find all the videos there. And you'll find, I mean, even Liquid, I mean, in terms of them saying that they don't counterfeit funds, we actually got the SEO of Liquid to also say, yeah, this is how they operate. See, we befriended them to try to fix the problem because they realized we caught them. So in a way, when we approached them, they actually gave us evidence without realizing what they were saying. The same thing as what you guys did with Sam right now. So we've got even their guys in Liquid saying exactly, on the centralized exchange, we can create whatever we want, really, and you can trade it however they want. And I'll give you that video as well so you can share it as well.
Yeah, I'll do that. Just trying to find the video myself. And do you want to add more, just a final point I want to ask you about, and we could do the rest. So I just tweeted, I pinned it as well. I'll pin it in the space, and I'll pin it on my profile. For the next space, for anyone that wants to set reminders, we'll do it on Tuesday or Monday, I think Monday. So you can set your reminders there. And we've got another guest coming in, and we can go through the rest of the points, because you sent me a lot of evidence, Hussein, you and Nick, who we couldn't bring up on stage. Did you want to touch on the, again, I don't know if you want to mention other names, but you did mention to me 2 other names, and then the exchanges.
Let me just say this is speculative, and this is from insiders who've come to us. This is from what we've been able to piece together. They're obviously trying to create a much bigger platform. FTX is just one pawn in this whole thing. So they were trying to connect multiple and this is again speculation, and just take this, whatever I can prove, I'll tell you straight out, it's provable. Whatever we can say, the technology says that that's what they're trying to do, I'll say, and whatever's given us from insiders, as it will say. So we believe they were trying to connect multiple amount of exchanges together, and they were trying to create a secondary engine, which is a layer 2 obviously protocol sitting on top of those exchanges to actually trade on those systems without having to ever go to the blockchain. And again, I know it's theory, I know it's speculative, and that's why I'm saying it very clear. But we also believe that there's a couple of parties involved, and basically everyone that came to us said the same names. So there's Kevin and there's Justin. So you've got those two guys.
Just to be clear, I want to elaborate, because you did tell me those names before. The names you're referring to are Kevin O'Leary and Justin Sun?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, again, I want to make it very clear that this is not,
speculative. There's no
Yeah.
evidence yet. This is speculative based on the discussions you've had, the insider you've spoken to, and few dots you've connected.
Correct.
But no proof to say this is 100% true. Correct?
Correct. I mean, it makes sense when you start looking at the overall who came into that $4 billion bailout, why would they come in, why was Kevin trying to bail out Sam? I mean, the stuff that we got given and the intel and the actions that were taken after do marry up very well, but it is all speculative. So let's not take it as proof. Let's not take it as being reality. Let's just take it as something we were given. We are investigating it very heavily. And I mean, right now, the picture doesn't look too bright for him. It does look like there is some kind of connection between them, but what it is, we have no idea.
All right. So I want to say to the audience two things. Number one, we'll continue the discussion a bit later. I'll do a summary. I'll send it through via email. If you want the summary that the team will do, just go on my profile at the top. There's the email section. You can subscribe there, and we do summaries of the spaces. So if you missed anything, and then the next space will be on Monday. I do want to say, like, if you go back to the space, and I've got a few people DMing me different segments, and a few of the reporters as well DMing, asking us about a few segments, and they're waiting for the space to end so they have the recording so they can go back and listen and get those and write their piece. So what I'm going to do is I won't continue the space. I will end it now. Again, if you want to continue the discussion, we'll do it on Monday. Pin tweet, you can set your reminders there. But I will end this one. So the recording is available, and reporters and anyone that's writing on this can go back and listen to those segments. As Hussein mentioned, and Ran and Simon mentioned as well, there are a few places that you should really listen to carefully. If you've got questions, you don't understand it or goes above your head, do ask us. We can clarify it for you. That are pretty serious admissions. Definitely goes well above the previous two interviews you did with Good Morning America and New York Times. So obviously we couldn't get enough admissions, and there's a lot of dodging here and there. I know we got a bit technical. Some people said not technical enough. Other people said it was too technical. But the point of these questions, and the point of Chet's questions and Ran as well, of digging into and sometimes discussing technical things, is to try to get to the facts and to understand what is untrue and what the truth is. So that was the purpose of it, and trying to corner him in some ways. So I recommend you go back, you listen to it carefully, and there's a lot of very important things that were said. Otherwise, I just want to thank all the speakers. I think we did a pretty damn good job considering the circumstances. I don't care about the disagreements between you guys and interruptions and all that. It doesn't go smoothly, but then again, this is a panel for the community to speak rather than just one or two people asking questions. All I care about, I don't really give a fuck about all this. All I care about is what Sam said and what can work in the court of law. I don't think he'll do more interviews after this because that was pretty tough questions that you guys asked. But I think it was definitely well worth it, and just gets us a tiny bit closer to the truth. Ran, Chet, Simon, any final words? Go ahead, Ran.
Mario, I'm going to jump, but well done to everyone. Thank you very much. I'm going to jump because I'm still live on YouTube, so I'm going to just join the YouTube stream.
Yeah, YouTube, Crypto Banter, hats off to you guys. Crypto Banter, hats off to you guys. Appreciate you guys joining. Ran, I'll let you go back to your guys and continue the live
Legends.
stream.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much, guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Simon, Chet, any final words, guys?
I'll let you go first, Simon.
Simon, go ahead.
Go for it. No, I know everyone beat each other up, but we got some stuff, as you said. I think it was pretty remarkable in itself just to have somebody in that level of scrutiny right now come on Twitter Spaces. In fact, I can't even comprehend why he's doing it, but I'd love to find out one day.
Yeah, it's just very like what's your thought, Simon? I've got a question, and I asked him that question, and he answered the same, generic answer he gave in two previous interviews. Is why is he doing this? And what do you think, Simon? Is he trying to paint a certain picture as part of a narrative, to try to create a defense, or is he just genuinely trying to answer questions? And obviously he can't answer all questions, otherwise he'll be in legal shit. And I think he already said too many things that will get him into legal trouble. But which one would you guess, Simon? Is he just trying to get the word out there, get his perspective, or he's trying to? He's got a certain narrative he's trying to pitch.
Look, speak that long when you've got stuff to hide, and you're bound to say something that's going to slip you up. But the only thing I can think of is that he's been born with a silver spoon in his mouth with incredibly influential family. And he just really believes in his abilities, and he still believes in his abilities to talk his way out of it, defend himself, save his reputation. and not slip up and not get things wrong. It's pretty remarkable. But I mean, I don't get, like, his parents would be, you know, the exact type of people to advise him exactly what to do. Like, you couldn't have asked for a higher pedigree of family in order to guide you through this process. And maybe they're just on a level that we don't even comprehend. I don't know.
Chep.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone who came on the stage to speak. I appreciate you, Simon, Ronan, Sane, and all the other individuals who were here before, chairman, etc. I think it's very unfortunate that they weren't communicated with properly on the way that the flow was supposed to happen. There were dozens of questions that were supposed to be gotten to that would have gotten to really, really, really critical answers that the entire community needs to know that have never been asked by any members of the media to him. And would have uncovered a lot of different things, even in relation to some of the last information that we had from the last space. So I'll just say, I'm happy that so many people came, but I'm so disappointed that this wasn't able to actually truly put forward what it could have done. And Mario, I'm disappointed in you.
Appreciate it, man. Again, if you're going to keep attacking someone, I'm getting DMs from him, he's about to jump off. So if you keep attacking someone non-fucking stop, he jumps off, then you got nobody to ask. All right? So just keep that in mind as you keep saying disappointed.
Mario,
it's pretty hard to manage a
agreement.
panel.
We had an agreement.
Bro, yes, and what if he fucking jumps off?
Bro,
48
hours.
Okay, listen, man, I'm not going to sit there. We could talk about this privately. I'm not going to sit there talking about in front of 20,000 people. You can work for 48 hours, but if you're asking questions in a rude way and keep interrupting, which I understand why you're doing it, you're trying to get to a certain point, and I think you're really good at it. But if you do it to a certain extent, the gentleman DMs you, okay, if this continues, I'm going to jump off. Do you want him to jump off? Because nobody can ask questions anymore if he just suddenly jumps off. And that happened on a few occasions, but something you don't see. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate it. I think we tried our best. I think Chet, I just want to give credit to Chet. His questions were pointed. He's really good at this. He questioned Moonstone Bank in the last space, and I did a whole thread on it. Highly recommend you guys listen to it, because I think he got some really key points in that line of questioning as well. He was a lot more brutal than he was with Sam. It was pretty shocking to all of us, but he got some really interesting points in that line of questioning with Moonstone. I highly recommend you listen to it. That's the last space that we did, and there's a lot of gems out there that the press is already writing about. Otherwise, appreciate you all. The recording will be out now. I'm gonna stop it. If you missed any part of the space, it's recorded. You can listen to it again, and again focus on the things that Sam said. Appreciate you all. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time. Bye.